Waiting for the birds. Are you okay back there? Okay. All right. All right. What an asshole.
He's going to stay there.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to Rhythm and Booze with Mikey Nikki. I am Mikey.
And I'm Nikki.
And this is a podcast where we talk about all sorts of topics, and that fucking crow won't shut up. I swear to God. If you guys can hear it out there, I am so sorry. We're in the fucking wild of Nikki's house. I don't know why I'm so angry right now. But
if you're watching the video, we're surrounded by wilderness.
This is a podcast where we talk about topics intersecting with all the things that we're interested in, which is Lindy Hop, swing dance world, burlesque, photography, whatever we happen to be in, roller skating sometimes, fucking crow. And every once in a while, we'll have guests on to talk about how they've pivoted through COVID and just what they're up to, because except for that.
That's going to be a thing.
Damn it. It's in my head now, and now I can't get over it. I'm sure
well, the
you guys can hear
reason
it.
that we have all the windows open and all the doors open is we have a very special guest
Very, very
with us
special
today.
guest.
And we're going to get back to that later.
Yeah, for sure.
But
First on the topic list is that we taught a class together for the first
we
time
did.
in a very long time.
We started our regular Tuesday night classes at Atomic Ballroom.
So much fun.
It was so fun and so weird.
It was so weird. I feel like this, and you can maybe say I'm wrong, but like we had masks on the whole time, and so did everybody else. So, but I was smiling the entire time. I was like, grinning.
The funniest thing is that normally you tell these jokes and you know they hit because you've taught so many classes and totally funny. But we're so used to a normal response of people laughing or people smiling or some kind of response from the students. And because of the masks, there's this like disconnect that happens between the students and the teachers. And like I ask the students questions a lot just to make sure they're understanding what I'm talking about. And it's just like dead eyes across the room, like, oh no, I'm bombing my class.
Okay, moving on. But I think it's funny because I was talking to Grace Babis after class, and we were like, she's like, you should just keep doing the Zoom thing, and I'm like, but the point is not to do the Zoom thing. The Zoom thing of like thumbs up means you can hear me,
or
and you're
down,
good,
or
down,
like
shaky, yeah. Más o menos for the Latin people out there that can hear me. But I think what was really fun was the guided practice, which is a stepping stone into hopefully the future of dancing at Atomic.
Yeah, so we get this question a lot. What is the guided practice? And a lot of people don't understand what it is. But it's like Mikey said, it's kind of like an intro back into social dancing, but it's a 45-minute class essentially where the instructors give one-on-one feedback to people dancing with their partners to DJ'd music.
A lot of other people would call that like office hours or something like that.
Yeah.
I've seen that a lot of times, and it's kind of like that.
But it's a really great opportunity for the students to get feedback without having to take a private lesson, but also social dance with their partner in a nice, safe environment. And we've got the doors open, and you know we're trying to be as safe as possible. Still masks, yeah.
And because of the state laws, we're keeping to that as much as we can, which is basically at
25%,
25%, which is still a lot for Atomic, but we're planning on moving forward in the future, and I think our Gavinator said the green. We said that last time.
Gavinator, yeah.
Gavinator said
it's funny every time.
Said we're going to be moving into the green zone, which is hopefully almost completely open by June.
Crazy.
So I can't wait for them. There's still so many more things like Muse.
Like what? Yeah.
Muse Burlesque.
We came back. We're back. We're coming back every month now.
The tits are back.
We did it. No, we did 2 shows last weekend. And back to back. And it was awesome. And it was really cool because the show's outside.
Under the stars.
Yeah, it's outside. It's nice with the twinkly lights and the whole thing. But it means that our venue where we normally hold the show, the entire place is our backstage.
Exactly.
It was so great.
So much fun.
Yeah.
And for multiple reasons. I mean, one, all the performers hadn't seen each other for a long time. It was their first main in-person gig. People came in from Northern California and other parts of California, but it was so amazing to have like the core group, which is like the Muse family. And then on top of that, being outside and all of the staff at the Copper Door or the Copper on 3rd in Santa Ana were so happy we were back, and they were just so giving. Like the security guards who are usually like tough guys, like don't give a shit, coming up to me later going, "Hey bro, can I get a discount on a shirt? We have Muse shirts. And he's like, can I get a discount? I was like, bro.
They're all family. They're family
like,
there.
Wear it. And they missed us. And that's such an interesting thing that we're finding all throughout this like reopening phase of now the end of COVID is that people are just nice. I think Dottie DeVille said that is such a thing that is happening, and I believe it. Like,
people are more kind, and connection means more, I think, than it ever has. And even those acquaintances from the Carpador that we didn't really spend much time with before are so happy that we're there and so happy to spend time with us. So it's really special, and we're really, really excited to be back. And we have a lot of really exciting things coming up for Muse that I can't talk about yet, but someday.
Not yet. But there was another thing that happened at Muse. We had a special person on the staff this time, Scout.
Yes. He's Scout Lightback on Instagram and TikTok and Facebook and everywhere. And he's been following me for the Neo-American Burlesque Project, which is a documentary that's going to be in the Library of Congress.
Yeah. They have I think it's called the folk heritage part of it, and it's basically taking stories from all around America and all around different types of Americans all around, and taking and collecting their stories and what the American experience is and the project is.
Yeah, so he went to the Library of Congress with some footage that he had from being backstage at a couple shows, and they were like, no, we want you to do this. We want you to do more of this because we don't have anything from the Neo-American burlesque scene in the Library of Congress. So he's traveling the country, talking to various performers and costume designers and producers and all kinds of things. And he even came to Atomic and filmed us doing some Lindy Hop, which was super cool.
If you saw our Instagram, you'll just see that like it was a fast-paced version of it. But he brought all his own stuff, all his own equipment, and like lit us up and brought a crane in. And just like filmed us from above, and it was so cool to dance like that and see it afterwards.
Oh, he actually just sent me an edited copy. I didn't show it to you yet.
Oh, no, you didn't. Ooh. You son of a bitch.
I know. Just wait. It's really cool.
But that definitely we jokingly but like lovingly call him our new best friend because he's so talented and so energetic and excited about doing lots of projects. It's again finding more creatives and bringing them into the fold and seeing how we can work together and see what we have to give and see what they have to give and pass it on to another person, pass us on to another person. Like, it's just such an amazing thing that's happening. Everyone's
this new synergy.
Yeah, exactly.
That I think we keep finding with other creatives, and I don't know, we keep bringing these new people into our lives that are now family. Yeah. You know, and it came during all this, during the pandemic.
If you saw also on Nikki's Instagram, Scout did a trailer using all the footage that he was taking of the performers backstage and lighting them and doing all this like slow motion stuff that came out absolutely beautiful. And I'm just like, oh, we're definitely working with him.
Yeah. We already had him looking at the lighting setup at Atomic, being like, how can we do better?
Yeah, exactly. And I think some of the performers backstage, they were like, oh no, I don't want to like be in that zone. And then they saw what he was doing, and they were like, give me 2 minutes to get dressed up real quick, and they go out there and do a photo shoot with Scout. So be on the lookout for more projects that we're going to bring to that.
All kinds of new things.
But April is such a busy month in general for multiple reasons, and one of them being your
birthday month.
Goddamn birthday.
And I get to have an adult birthday this year.
What is an adult birthday? Tell us.
Vegas.
Exactly. Vegas with no kids.
Vegas with no kids. And I mean, we are going to pick up my grandma and take her to a bottomless mimosa brunch. I sent her a text and asked if she wanted to come, and she replied, yes. So I'm very excited about that. But
Granny loves her slot machines and mimosas, right?
Yes, she does. Yeah. Woman after my own heart.
It's going to be perfect, and we're going to just live it up in Vegas because we all need to...
Safely, with precautions.
Yeah, we're all
gonna... But what's great is that it's also going to be with a group of friends that are also vaccinated, who we haven't seen in over a year.
Yeah. It's always really funny that we have to, like, do the precursor of that, like...
Disclaimer.
Disclaimer. Everyone is in this picture. They are good to be shotted up. We all have great 5G service now. Let me tell you that.
Oh, that joke is so old at this point. It's not even funny anymore.
I love it so much. Bill Gates is like... And lastly, we would like to give a shout out to Swivels. the shoe company in France that makes all of our shoes and all of our beautiful shoes. Look at that! Look at that bottom. It's so pretty. Wow! Look at those arches. Wait, I can't do. Let me just do that. Don't look at the bottom. It's so bad.
Mikey's showing his dirty shoe.
They're so comfy. They're super light. I really love them. But one of the reasons why we're plugging them right now is
they have a Kickstarter for their new vegan light sandals, kind of like the ones I'm wearing if you're watching the video. And they're trying really hard to get this sustainable, made from water bottle product out there. And it's my favorite dance shoes. And I think you should check them out. So check out Swivels on Facebook or on Instagram with 2 L's. Not how we usually spell it, but with 2 L's.
French way. This is possible. But the other thing is we're big fans first off, and they've been so kind to us by sending us some merchandise. So it's sort of a slight partnership that we're sending this out to. Just so you know, full transparency. She also has 15 pairs of boots.
I do. I have almost every color of boots. And 2 pairs of a couple. Oh, the black ones are definitely my favorite just because they're the best.
Legit.
For me.
Make some boots for guys, or do you need to get a bigger shoe size for me?
Just make the same ones, but bigger. Yeah, I think they would work.
Make them from my hobbit feet. They're hairy and wide. All right, that's about it for the catch-up time. And I think it's time to introduce our special guest.
Our very special guest.
Do you want to do it, or should I do it?
You go ahead.
Okay.
You've got a long-standing history.
I know. It's so interesting. So this guy is just integral to our whole swing modern dance neo scene. He has traveled the world performing with his bands, Campus 5, the orchestras, the many other countless bands that I can't even imagine. He has probably played at your favorite dance contest over the years. We have a long history together, and actually one just came to mind, old memories. Yeah, we'll talk about that. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the show, Mr. Jonathan Stout. Hey! Welcome, Jonathan. It's been so good to see you. How are you?
I'm so much better being with actual people, and I'm so excited for this. I can't tell you how weird.
Yeah.
Totally.
You're not wearing masks, and neither am I, but we're actually being responsible by, like, we're not jerks. Like,
exactly. Yeah.
What?
We definitely we had a moment at the door. We were both like, what, do I put the mask
how do we do this?
Mask off.
Yeah, I put it on reflexively, knowing I was walking into a house where we'd already know.
And we do have all the windows and doors open, just because it seemed like a good thing to do, right?
But I'm so excited for a world that can get better because, like, you can trust the CDC because people aren't editing their email.
Yes, not anymore.
All right, wake up, sheeple. Oh no, no, the other way.
Oh man.
So it's good to see your face completely, which is great. We literally haven't seen each other for over a year now.
Over a year, yeah.
And the last time we saw each other was really quick.
Yeah,
Inspiration Weekend.
And the last Inspiration Weekend, and
where you got a little ill.
Well, last Inspiration Weekend was right before the world ended.
Yeah.
And
it was the last gig we had.
Yeah, and we were already freaking out. Mm-hmm. How do we do this? Do we cancel the event? Do we keep going? How do we take precautions? Mm-hmm. Just trying to get everything all, feeling good. And I was emceeing that weekend, and I think I must have said, "Go wash your hands," like 5 million times.
If only we'd known that wearing masks would have been so much more useful than. But we didn't know anything. But the long story short is that we were playing 2 of the 3 nights, and we played the first, the Saturday night with the Campus 5, and I got home, and the next morning I woke up with that kind of stomach bug that you have that just means you're not going anywhere for 24 hours, and you're going to feel awful. And so not only did I not come, but I had to spend torturous hours, doing all the work of putting the charts together so that someone could play them.
I thought you were going to say torturous hours in the bathroom. I was like, oh no.
I did not say that. But I'm not saying that, but I did not say that. But no, it was just like one of those things where you're like, your body is like, nope, everybody out. And by the way, you're going to feel like it's 1,000,000 degrees and you're going to shiver and all this stuff.
Awful.
And I had to do like 2 solid hours of passing out charts.
Oh my God.
And that's just like, that's exhausting kind of ordinarily. But like Wally, our bass player, lives around the corner from us, and he was able to come pick him up. And,
cool.
You know, between Albert and Josh, I've got, you know, 2 people that have been with us since the beginning who have led the band under duress. And I was able to just kind of hit Josh up and be like, hey, could you got to count off the tunes anyway. Like, you know the tempos of all this stuff. Like,
it was amazing. It was amazing.
Yeah, it was still a great night.
Yeah, it was amazing to see how the
it
band
wasn't that great, right?
I mean, it was.
You were missed.
You were definitely missed. Like, but I think I was like so scared. Like, it's not gonna work. It's not work. John's not here. But like, you got them so good, and like, I mean, not to say it in a negative way, but trained very well, and like, must be the charts, and it must be like
it's the charts,
the cohesiveness though as well. That like they were able to stick together and stick to the plan without you there. But I'm not saying they don't need you there.
Yeah, no, I mean,
it's a well-oiled machine.
But that's one of the things that is kind of central to the way that I do things. It's always like everything we do is based with charts to some degree, and I like that the charts are just like directional enough that like everybody knows what they're doing and they kind of play themselves, but there's enough kind of room for interpretation in parts of it where they can be living, breathing things. And it's kind of like choreography. Like if you came up with a routine where it had to be like performed exactly the same way every time, and if you were like, your energy was like a little bit different, like maybe that would be insincere in that moment of what you're really feeling. Whereas like the idea is to make the routine enough so that you can really just be who you are and how you feel. Or like, you know, we've all done a corporate dance gig where it's like, all right, California routine, you get a chorus, and then we all, you know.
Legit, how many times have we planned something like that?
So many times, like countless
like,
times.
But that idea that like whatever one couple plans to do for their chorus is going to be more inspired and sincere and authentic than if you like choreographed everything.
Right.
So like what's great with the orchestra, like that's the most choreographed, for lack of a better word, thing, because when you've got a saxophone line, they not only have to play like the same melody, they have to play the same melody at the same time and in deliberate harmony.
Wow.
Like,
yeah.
You're on a C, that means I got to be on an A, which means I got to be on an F. Like they got to, and so you have to write that stuff out, otherwise people are going to run into each other.
Wow, that's really, you put it in such a great dancer terms that I was like, I understand. That's like the first time I understand it. I was like, you know, okay.
I always call it like when I talk about like the change from like New Orleans types of jazz and Chicago jazz, where so you have maybe 3 or 4 horns that are all kind of communally improvising over and above each other. Like they all have their lane, and like the trumpets and like the upper middle playing the melody, and the clarinet's usually noodling on top, and then the trombone's kind of on the bottom. And like so, like there can be collisions, but everybody's in their lane. But so I always think of it as like a traffic metaphor, but I never thought of it as like a literal dancers running into each other.
Yeah, it's perfect.
But what's great about the orchestra, the way certain charts are, is there's room for the soloist to kind of do what they're going to do. Yeah. And, you know, if I'm putting my hand on the scale a little bit and kind of like pushing it, I'm kind of trying to manipulate them into a certain thing.
Right.
I'm trying to set them up for something, and I can't like make it happen like a puppet master, because they got to feel it, they got to do their thing. But like when you take a Campus 5 arrangement, if Jim's going to play a muted solo, I'm probably going to put that before Albert's tenor solo, because Albert's tenor solo is going to be louder than say Jim's muted, like kind of like a cut mute, like a toy trumpety kind of sound. But like if Jim's on plunger, Jim's kind of famous for playing this just plunger where it's like, it's like rips your head off. Like that's going to be the peak of the song. So like the order in which you pick which soloist goes like kind of gives you an arc. So like I know that if I sequence the soloists in a certain way, it's probably going to naturally lead to a certain kind of dynamic arc in the song, but I can't like make them do it. I'm not like dance monkey like that. But like the orchestra, like those arrangements are almost all like historical ones, and they're really good, but there's just enough breathing room in them so that like they can like actually play. And that's the thing. Like Josh knows all of those tunes.
Josh led the band that night and was amazing.
And like Albert led the band at Camp Hollywood the year Charlie was born.
Yeah.
And Albert's led the Campus 5 many times. And then Josh, this last time, there's been a year and but this last time at ILHC when Michael Gamble's son was born.
Oh yeah.
Wow, that's right. Yeah.
And so when I led Michael's bands for the rest of the weekend, but the kind of battle part of it, like I was leading my half, and I had the idea that the best thing would be to have Laura lead the band because that's what Ella did when Chick Webb died.
Yeah,
Laura
I love that.
They were doing Chick Webb, and that just seemed like the most awesome thing. But Laura was like not necessarily prepped to like know the tempo of every instrumental song, although not selling Laura short, like she's a world-class Balboa DJ and general DJ, Lindy Hopper and Balboa dancer. So like she probably could have counted off every one of those songs, but she was like, Josh, can you like handle that part of it? And you know, she's got enough to do like singing. So, but so Josh ended up kind of music directing that. So I was like, that just sort of made the most sense in the kind of quick thing.
And it did, and it came across really well. Like it was interesting to me, and I want to kind of loop around a little bit, but it was interesting to me to see Josh really uphold the things that you hold to be true for when you lead the band and when it's your sound. And you once described it to me a long time ago, and we'll get into this a little bit later, but the sort of like your tricks as a band leader and what you want it to be. And like I'm like, oh, and that's again where you sort of told me in dancers' terms, like if you're a leader, you have these side of things you love doing and you can pull off. And I'm like, oh, that makes sense. You know, like that's a really interesting thing. But before we go on a little further, I want to kind of also reintroduce you to everybody that may not be knowing.
It may not be a Lindy Hopper because
may not be Lindy Hopper, exactly.
Our listeners are kind of all over the place.
Yeah, because I've known you as a dancer first.
Hang on.
Go ahead.
First off, what are we drinking right now?
Oh yeah. Oh my God, I totally forgot. I was so enthralled.
Just so excited to see a person.
So we are drinking. If you want to make this at home, you Google David Wondrich, Wondrich, 4-ingredient punch. It's on epicurious.com. And David Wondrich is a really great cocktail historian and a really nice guy, actually. And this is like the best, awesome, easy-to-make punch in the kind of 18th, 19th century punch tradition.
Cheers. And it's delicious. Yeah, cheers.
Thank you so much. For the podcast listener, this is a great drink. We'd all just sipped, and good luck trying to figure it out. But
we have a whole tutorial for you later, actually.
We did this whole thing at the very beginning, and it ended up being like 3 different things, and I'm like, oh, this is going to be so awesome. So for those of you who don't know, I know you as a dancer first. Then I know you, I know what that note was. Swing Pit Party. You had when you graduated. When you either graduated or passed your bar, you had a party at Swing Pit. Or maybe people had a party for you.
Maybe when I graduated college.
I think so. I think I was there. That's okay. I just remember there being a big party for you at Swing Pit.
Okay, keep explaining who he is, though.
Oh, yeah, sorry. Yeah. And now you're like world-renowned as a band leader, swing, jazz, and all-around like amazing musician.
I'm pretty great.
Yeah. I gotta say.
No honestly, one would argue that.
Honestly, like, I think, of course, arguably, but like, I think you are one of the best, like, to hold true to the old styles and the traditions, and try your best to make them yours and keep them going.
Yeah. I always have this feeling when we're seeing you up there at Lindy Focus or even Camp Hollywood that we're like, this is as close as we'll ever get to being there back in the day.
That's exactly what I'm going for. So that's the best possible compliment you could give me.
So what happened first then? Dancing or music or playing?
Well, I mean, I'm going to save all of your non-Lindy Hop listeners like 40 minutes and say that if you really want like the whole thing, just listen to me on Ryan Swift's podcast.
Oh, yeah. There you go.
On the track. Because that's like an hour and a half or 2 hours of the whole journey. But no, I started swing dancing in high school. I went to a magnet school with a bunch of really, really smart kids and who were super socially awkward. And our Spanish teacher was like, had organized like tango lessons at Arthur Murray because like it's close enough to Spanish, like that's Spanish culture, right?
Totally, yeah.
And she'd gotten bored of it in the year, and then like that was like 94, 95, so it was like the start of the kind of the modern swing, neo swing revival.
Right.
And I basically, she was like, well, let's do swing this time as just sort of an extracurricular activity. You know, I'm from Los Angeles. This school had kids bussed from literally all over Los Angeles City. And Los Angeles City is like, you know, millions and millions of people, but it's also geographically one of like the most wide, like it's a huge distance. It's like, it can take 2 hours to get from one side to the other sometimes. So it was this great communion that we had where we would all kind of find a way to get to the dance studio that we were taking these lessons at. And basically like I started dancing and like I started playing guitar in sixth grade. And, you know, like any teenage boy, I was like, I hope girls will notice me. Unfortunately, the kind of music that I was into, like learning Metallica solos note for note, was not exactly doing really great. And I mean, swing dancing was like, oh, that's a cool thing, and like that seems like a way to like be social and meet people and stuff. And I don't know what it was. Like I was standing there in my goth industrial phase in like, you have 10
pictures of
Doc
this?
Martin boots.
Where's the pictures?
Black jean shorts, a black like industrial band shirt. You know.
Yeah, you have to. I'm gonna ask Rachel for pictures.
Like, this awful like I was trying to grow my hair out, but it was only page boy length. It was just terrible.
It just wouldn't keep going. It just stayed there.
I think a comedian that I like has a term for it: hair drapes. Yeah, where they're just like split in the middle, just down, like they're drapes. Yeah, and like for whatever reason, like it just immediately was like this is the thing. And I joke that it's like the scene in Close Encounters where Richard Dreyfuss is like playing with his mashed potatoes. He's like, this means something. Yes, exactly. And for whatever reason, it just like clicked. And so like they were like, hey, does anybody want to get together like on a lunch hour during the school week and like practice? And I was like the only one there. But kind of very quickly. We got passed off from the person that was teaching those lessons, who happened to be Jerry Jordan.
Oh, funny.
The founder of Atomic Ball.
Yeah. Full circle.
Yeah. Who taught at Arthur Murray and was kind of on the outside of that crowd of original, quote unquote, Hollywood style indie hoppers that were here in LA. And then we got passed to like the girl that I think he was dating, but they immediately broke up. But this lady, Cindy Wells, and Big Cindy. And so we started taking lessons with her, and she immediately gave us this thing about we're doing Dean Collins Lindy Hop. And the way I describe the kind of attitude of all of it is I'm a 90s kid. I remember when Nirvana broke and like all of a sudden anything that was 80s or hair metal was like over.
Right.
Yeah.
And there was this like second coming of punk rock attitude that was imbued in all of it. And bear in mind, like I'm 11, so like, what the hell do I know? But there was this punk rock attitude of like, no, this is the real thing, not that corporate, like hollow, lame stuff. This is like the real thing. And so like my whole life has just been like, I want to get to the real thing, the real good thing.
Yeah.
And
okay,
like
that makes a lot of sense.
And like my mother is was born and raised in Naples. She's not Italian American. Like she's been here for since 1968. But like she's an Italian woman living in America and very much clings to her Italian identity. Italian? How did that my mouth did not work.
It's a good punch.
Is that punch?
No, but like there's something about Italian culture that like Italians are the best at everything. The best version is the Italian version. And Neapolitans are like twice as strong because it's the Neapolitan version is better. And Naples is the birthplace of pizza, so I'm sure you can imagine how I feel about the abominations that are served as pizza around the globe. But like that was like a kind of a natural fit. Like I'm my mother's son, like 100%. So like when it came to this like punk rock thing, like, no, this is the real thing. And then Cindy was telling us, no, this isn't the kind of stuff that you learn in Arthur Murray, which is like the buy some two-tone shoes and some clip-on spiders and you're a swing dancer. This is the real, this is
awesome.
Yeah. And so we took lessons with her, and it just like, it was so deeply meaningful, and it just spoke to me. The weirdest thing, though, is she was part of this whole thing that was happening in Los Angeles of people like Eric and Sylvia and Hillary and Peter Loggins and Alicia Milo and Lisa Ferguson and all those Christian and Thea, like Sean Carter and all, like
Min and Karina,
and
like
Tip and all
all these people
that were trolling through old movies, looking for clips of Dean Collins, going to places like Bobby McGee's and meeting the original Balboa and swing dancers and
sneaking in camcorders to the USC library.
There you go. Yeah,
and getting it in the and get in the booth and just record it. Okay, good.
Yeah, and so that whole culture was happening, and I just heard about it and didn't know. So it wasn't until I started college in 1999 that I actually went to Satin Ballroom, which was like the biggest dance in LA at the time, monthly.
Yeah, in Culver City.
Yeah, and I saw people doing the things she'd been teaching us. I'm like, oh, that's what it's supposed to look like.
Yeah.
Cool.
And probably the old timers too.
Yeah, and I saw old timers, although I didn't know who they were. It wasn't until I went to USC and I met Nick Williams, and who's a year ahead of me, and kind of got into the swing club, and then he and I started carpooling like all the time. We go to John Cooper's store, the Starlight Roof in Pasadena.
Oh my God.
Right?
I love that you guys have this whole history that's completely before my time of dancing.
We need to tell the young children what it was like before YouTube.
Legit.
The young children.
Now, it's not as bad as... So there's a great interview of Sylvia Sykes on Ryan Swift's podcast, The Track, where she talks about staying up to watch old movies without a VCR, because they didn't exist yet, on the hope that they might contain swing. Exactly. Okay, it's not that bad.
Yeah.
But basically, under the table at this old, like, kind of record store and video store, this guy, John Cooper, had dubbed a bunch of kind of famous swing dance scenes in movies onto a video, and for like, whatever, $20, he would like sell it to you under the table.
Yeah.
And that was the first time I saw Hell's a Poppin' and Day at the Races and Groovy Movie and
was that the original Jitterbugs VHS?
Yeah.
Yeah. It was a different one?
Yeah, that's original Jitterbugs is the one that Nick made afterwards.
Oh,
but
okay.
This Starlight Video one is one that went across, and it didn't have any titles or anything. It was just like here's the clip, here's the next clip, here's the next clip.
Cool.
And it's like that, and like Cakewalk and Lindy Hop, like all those videos that were just like compiled together. That was one of the ones. And you know who gave me that one? Or not John. I got it secondhand, I guess, from Nate Sartain.
Yeah.
From San Diego now.
Yeah.
He was the one. I remember because my brother like woke up one night after coming back from Memories, and he's like, hey, I got a video. I was like, what? And I look into his room, and there's Nate sprawled out on the couch. Like, he's like, he couldn't make it home. And he's like, and for this, he gave us this video. And I was like, oh. So, yeah, I remember those times where it was like gold. Like, what am I watching?
Yeah, it was amazing that this whole kind of history existed. And to say nobody knew about it is a little presumptuous, because like I've started becoming really careful about describing that neo swing boom that we all experienced as the revival, because it kind of erases the history of the Harlem Lindy Hoppers that kept dancing the whole time.
Totally, yeah.
And all of the West Coast legends as well. They were dancing the entire time.
Yeah, but like that wasn't a thing anybody but them knew about anymore.
Exactly.
Right.
And so the fact that all of us rediscovered it or learned about it for the first time was really cool. And again, like the kind of Lindy Hop that was being taught most places on Earth was either really bad ballroom Lindy Hop, kind of like the Arthur Murray thing, or it was kind of just the version that, say, Frankie was teaching, in his 80s.
Yeah.
And the people that learned from Frankie, there wasn't really anything from this separate Los Angeles tradition. There obviously wasn't any Balboa being taught anywhere on Earth. And again, like, I often think of things in terms of population dynamics, and I don't know why 12th grade biology class really stuck with me, because I'm not a science major. But like the ways that when you take one example and then you extrapolate from that, how that is limited to the genes of that one example. So like Frankie is not the only Harlem Lindy Hopper.
Right.
There are hundreds. And like so many of us, even the people that have been doing it for 20 plus years, 25 years, I still like struggle with like, okay, well, I recognize that guy, but I can't remember his name.
Yeah.
And like, I know Alan Leon and Frankie, but like you start getting and each one of them had their own trajectory and their own thing. And the idea that Dean Collins was this one guy that learned to dance in New York, but then brought it here and then seeded an entire population of people that all learned in one way or another from him if they did the Lindy, and how his specific traits are then seeded and even exaggerated.
Right.
So like the whole thing's really deeply fascinating. But like you didn't have any diversity of Lindy Hop in the world. You had either things that really aren't even remotely Lindy Hop and like jivey kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And then you had anything kind of coming from Frankie in his later days. And then obviously the originals, but like I don't think very many people knew about them unless you happen to live in New York or you happen to dance at Bobby McGee's.
Right. And I think that's very important because like in a lot of cultures that we're in communities that we're a part of now, like burlesque or roller skating, is that exact same thing that keeps coming up. Is that there was a revival. All of a sudden it was gone and all of a sudden it's back. Like
it's been here the whole time.
Exactly. And not only that, like it's people like us that have been around for quite a long time that are saying this out loud for everybody to hear, that even we don't know all the answers. And like, I know these specific dancers or these specific performers or these specific roller skaters that like are very important to the community, but then there's more. And if you just go out there and seek it out, like it'll become more apparent to you, and you just talk to more people. You don't have to take them for their, like absolute truth, but you can get more information and keep it going. It's all going to be a verbal story that's going to continue through us.
And I mean, like we can just think of our own immediate history. Just think of like how many awesome dancers in the late 90s, early 2000s that we know that were like crushing it, but like maybe they didn't win a competition, and so there's no video of them.
Exactly.
And like how they're kind of not really represented in history, whereas someone that maybe won a famous comp but like didn't actually dance that much might be overrepresented. I was a history major at USC, and one of the things that I really appreciated was there was a class about historical theory and the fact that
that blows my mind.
I know.
I didn't go to this. What do you call it? College. I didn't go to that thing.
But he's a huge history nerd.
I'm a huge history nerd. So I was like, tell me more.
Well, I mean, basically, like it was just this one class where we took it said like, you want to get primary sources because they're more direct and they're not being filtered through another lens. Except for the fact that every source inherently has its own lens because it's written from its perspective. So like a government document from whatever century is inherently biased in the ways that government was. So it may not be factoring those things in. So like I always kind of had that in the back of my mind with a lot of this stuff. So I think it's really important that like we accept that there's kind of like no like perfect truth with all of our tales of swing dance history.
I mean, it's easy because like before we got onto the podcast, we were just chatting about like some of the things we were thinking of and how like us reminiscing a little bit because I was talking to Nikki and I'm like, oh, do you remember this? And she's like, no, I don't remember this.
That's all before my time.
And then like even then like I got it wrong because I was like, hey, Jonathan, you used to do this swing battle at Satin Ballroom, and he's like, you mean, the one I did? I was like, no, you weren't in it. It was someone else, right? No, it was. I was like, oh, okay.
Schooled.
Actually, that one's really important too, because like I feel like we had heard about so many Battle of the Bands from way back in the day. From the Palladium to the Savoy Ballroom, and it being such a big thing. And like the first time in my history, in our Neo history, was the one that happened at Satin Ballroom.
Yeah, well, that was a really important moment for me. But the funny thing is, despite the kind of like rich history of famous battles of the bands, I actually think they're a terrible night of dancing.
Yeah.
And the fact that I think that is why I kind of led it the way I did. Josh and I basically this was 2003. And my band was maybe, so he started his band. He was kind of the first LA dancer to start a band, and he started it in January 2002.
And that was Josh Colazo with the Feet Warmers.
That's right. And I happened to be on the first gig because John Reynolds was busy, and that was obviously a super important thing for me. And I basically spent the next 6 months subbing when John wasn't available, and I learned more about playing swing guitar in that period of time than I had in like the 2 years previously.
Wow,
and
crazy.
Hillary and I had talked about putting something together, and seeing that it was possible the way Josh had done it, we did it in June of 2003 or 2002, and so it was like maybe 6 months, a year later. Reinhardt and Monica, who happened to be running the Satin Ballroom, they said, can you do this? And I said, yes, we can. But like, one of the things you run into this problem is that it can be really combative. It can be unpleasant. And it can get into this thing of like, who can play harder and louder and faster.
Yeah.
And like, this was very early stages of sort of like the raw Lindy thing.
Yeah.
That was starting
Oh,
to
totally. It was around the ULHS time. That's why Josh was getting more time because he was playing for Ultimate Lindy Hop.
This is when I started to come into the picture. Yeah. Right at this time right here.
Yeah. And so basically like, really super brief history.
I know this part.
It seems like the swing scene was always having like these dichotomies of like different camps that were kind of battling for the soul of Los Angeles Lindy Hop.
And it was all going down on the sports match ring of old memories.
Yeah. And
the club in Anaheim.
And it was very much like originally kind of like that, like the Frankie thing, but also then kind of like the superficial neo swing versus kind of the Hollywood thing of like, you need to dress in vintage clothing and actually learn about this culture and deep dive. And then there was kind of a reaction to that where it was like, well, just because you bought a gabardine shirt doesn't mean you know anything about this stuff.
Yeah.
And don't get me wrong, I love my gabardine shirts.
Legit.
And I still liked that stuff, and that was my zone.
Yeah.
But I see what people are reacting to.
Yeah.
Sure.
It's like, just because you're not wearing white bucks doesn't make you not a swing dancer.
Right.
I must have had 4 or 5 white bucks before I stopped wearing them. But like the thing is you put it in such a great way. There was like this camp and this camp and maybe a couple other ones. But I think what happened during that raw phase is that everyone was just like, well, like, fuck all the camps. Like, what if you just chose the best parts of it, as in, like, learning about it, learn about what you're actually doing, and then do it the way you want to be doing because you're like a kid, too, and then push it forward.
It's so funny to hear about old memories because when I came in, it was new memories.
Yeah.
And so old memories to me and all the nostalgia that's wrapped up in old memories and all the stories that come out of old memories is almost to me like hearing about the Savoy or the Palladium.
It was a magical time because
oh my God, big time.
It was literally sort of a club. And what I mean is like a club as in a grouping of people that choose to be together, not like a nightclub, because it was also a bar and nightclub.
Yeah.
But basically, it was a bar in Whittier.
Well, the first one was in Anaheim.
I'm sorry, Anaheim. Yeah.
First one was Anaheim. Second one was
was
Whittier.
It like Tustin? Wait, no,
it was on Tustin, but it was Anaheim.
It's a Starbucks now.
Yeah.
I know.
Starbucks and El Polvo Loco.
Yeah.
But basically, it was this place where they had dancing every night of the week.
Yep.
They had an amazing dance floor, and the magic thing was that Saturday nights, whatever else was happening in Los Angeles, and again, this was like the tail end of this neo swing boom where you had the Derby going 7 nights a week and lines out the door and all this stuff. But whatever was happening, whether it was Satin Ballroom in Culver City, whenever like midnight rolled around or whatever it was, they closed officially and then reopened as a private party.
Yep.
And then that was the after hours spot. And so
awesome.
whether you went there on purpose as your primary destination or whether that was the thing you drove an hour or two after the thing you had just been at.
For me, it was Disneyland. After Disneyland, we were going there with my brother.
But this is Late Night Lindy?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
I'm so
nights,
sad. I never got to go to that.
And
it was
like,
crazy.
And like, people like Reuben Brown DJing, Wolfman, Tim Woolman.
Peter Loggins.
Dennis Chang, old school.
Oh my God. Jeez. Yeah.
Yeah.
Traeger.
I mean, this could go lots of places. But, and there was an element of just like the fact that it was this closed thing that you had to know about was like so cool. And it really became like a community.
It really did.
And then, but there was always sort of like fighting because like, I was interesting to hear, we don't have that many outlets in Lindy Hop media, which is why I'm so grateful to be here. But like, one of the ones that I reference way too often for its own good is Ryan Swift's podcast, The Track.
Yeah.
But my friend Shayna Worrell was on it, and she talked about how like, for her, learning to dance groove, which was sort of like dancing to like 50s and 60s jazz and like a very different style of dress where it was like a lot of really baggy clothes and this kind of super hyper micro musicality where like you would use every little bit of a soloist thing.
Yeah.
It wasn't that you just did a series of moves that matched the thing. You would like have to hit every... that had been a reaction to kind of the neo swing superficiality.
Right.
And they said, well, that's not real jazz or that's not sincere or authentic. What can we go to that is real? Well, 50s jazz is real. and we'll just do something based on that. And so you could go see like a straight ahead jazz trio that doesn't make swing music in any way that I think is swing music. You can go to see that, and that was authentic, sincere jazz. And if you could dance to that, then you were getting an authentic experience. And for me, like groove was like the enemy, the thing. That must die.
Oh yeah, every time. Yeah, and that was another camp as well. Yeah. Around the same time. Like when we say about these times, like the late '90s, early 2000s, it was definitely this like style wars that we always talk about. And like legit, I don't know if you get it, but like you should, like, because you were in it as well as a musician and a dancer. And I think those times were very formative. It's so proper that it happened at that time because it was like a teenager coming into their own and like trying to figure shit out. You know?
But like that stuff has been happening even the last 20 years of this decade because if you look at the way national Lindy Hop music has changed, at the middle of the 2000s of that first decade, it was like this super trad jazz thing that was the thing.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And again, it was like the same thing with the raw Lindy Hop where it's like, I'm not going to wear white buck shoes and dress in this vintage clothing like it's a costume. And again, like for me, their rebelling against that was still in the same service of something real and quote unquote authentic. And I was like, no, but we are the real authentic. That guy on the white bucks over there is a poser doesn't mean I am.
This was the bootcut jean T-shirt phase, I think.
Yeah. Or like a microfiber pants with too many zippers.
Yeah, and so like that whole like kind of first half of the decade, like we were sort of uncool in certain places because we were playing late 30s, early 40s jazz and not playing like Dixieland.
Right.
And then slowly over time that kind of shifted so that now like most national Lindy Hop events in the United States are pretty focused on swing era jazz.
Pretty much around the world, to be honest.
I don't think it's very clear I'm sure to everyone that like your expertise and the way that you've led your bands over the years has led to this new era of all these other bands that are popping up that are trying to do the same thing, that are trying to be more authentic.
Like specifically, like I can remember bands from Lithuania asking me like about you. You know, like you're from LA. Like,
Give me the inside info.
Like I'm a fucking musician, and like they're playing the oompa, right? Yeah. And like playing the Dixieland stuff because that's like what they can do. And then they're like, but they want to be closer to that feel. Do you feel like there's a lot of people out there that like go to you to be like, hey, how do I play this better?
I mean, people aren't actually coming to me. I've given some guitar lessons during the pandemic of people that are interested. But I mean, I'm deeply flattered that somebody would be like, well, how do they do it? I mean, number one, hire Josh Colazzo on drums. That's step one.
Can't go wrong.
But no, I mean, but I feel the same way that like I was a dancer in 1999, you know, that era, who was going to see bands, and there was something that wasn't right. And you know, my wife really thinks it's important to only say positive things, and I want to respect that, and I want to honor that kind of, you know, be impeccable with your word principle that she lives by. But so I'm not going to say that it's bad music, but it's not swing music. Right. Straight ahead jazz, like kind of 50s and beyond jazz, it doesn't feel like swing music.
Right.
And swing music is dance music in the way that disco is, that house music is. And there are like other forms of electronic music, but they're not house. We can get Latasha on here. And Latasha Barnes, world house champion and Lindy Hopper.
Badass, overall badass.
Yes, just a wonderful human being. But like, it's not quite the same thing. And the example I often use is like, if you wanted to go see like an oldies night, and growing up in the time I did, oldies was KRF 101 here in Los Angeles.
Exactly.
And that was the Beach Boys and Buddy Holly and Motown and stuff like that.
Motown Mondays.
But that's not oldies to people now.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It's Nirvana now on KRF.
Exactly.
Which is horrifying.
Yeah, which is crazy. I'm like, oh, I mean, cool, but oh.
But even then, like if you were like, I'm going to go to a rock and roll sock hop, and then it was The Who coming out playing Summertime Blues by Eddie Cochran. That's a rockabilly song from the 50s, but The Who played it at Woodstock really famously as The Who with this like, you know, massive distortion. And you're like, I see that you're covering the same song.
Right.
and you haven't changed much of the music per se, but the way you're playing it is just an entirely different thing. And just the way that like the British invasion took the blues and turned it into the kind of rock and roll, and then it turned into heavy metal and all this stuff. You know, if you wanted to see like a good old rock and roll show and somebody's like, here's Metallica, you're like, not what I meant. And so jazz is that same way where like 30s and 40s feeling jazz is a very specific rhythmic and harmonic, like the tonality of it, the chords they use. There's a sound that it has that when you don't honor that, it loses something. And you know, all of this is all about honoring the tradition and honoring these people that came before us and made this music. And for me, it felt like later jazz musicians felt like the jazz that evolved was thus inherently better.
Right.
And it's like Magneto being like, yes, mutants should rule over humans.
You guys speak the same language.
But like that idea that like somehow because jazz changed and got more complicated, that was an improvement, and that you should add that back to the thing when you do the old thing. And even when people try, it's so hard. It's like an accent because the way that you naturally rhythmically phrase something is very much like the way someone speaks.
Right.
And it's really hard to do an accent perfectly that's not your own natural accent and improvise what you're talking. It's really easy to go, I'm going to do an Arnold Schwarzenegger impression. Get to the chopper! Like when you say the line, or like you do the Dana Carey, Ross Perot impression. George Bush one, not going to do it. Not going to. You're like, you're doing the thing that people associate it. People already, I love the hand. I love the space work that's occurring for the podcast listeners. But like, you're already being clued in. And so it's like when you hear ba-ba-da-da-da-da-ba-da, like there's some work that's being done by your brain that you start to accept it, but it's a very superficial impression. And so like there was a great band in LA that I'm not going to say who because I don't want to be mean, but like they recorded Artie Shaw's Lady Be Good. Ba, 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 da, ba. When they played it, it was like right. So they're never getting to the note on time. They're getting to it kind of late, and they're kind of like sliding up to it.
Yeah.
And like that kind of grooviness is great. But Hillary said this once about a band that had neutered a song, and she's like, "Wow, they really cut the balls off that one." And
that's a perfect way to put it.
Totally.
My business partner and co-band leader for these last 19 years.
We got to get Hillary on here.
Legit.
Wonderful. She's just the best. But there's something about that it's not wrong musically. It's not bad music, but it defeats the purpose of the thing.
Right.
And like so much of the way jazz rhythm sections play after the swing era is about not playing a dance beat and kind of bristling at the restriction of having to play a dance beat. And so it's like if you have house music and it doesn't have then it's not house music.
Right.
So like that's why we started a band, and we were swing dancers in those early 2000s that, you know, I can't tell you how many bands, and again, I'm not being mean, because it's not that they were bad music, but they weren't playing swing music. And so you would sit through the band waiting for them to be done, and then the DJ would come on and be like, okay, fine, now I can dance.
Yeah. I mean, I completely see it in the essence of how the tradition continues. So in the sense of music, from my perception of it all, like the sense of music is that it evolved from this jazz style that is the original, and they're still mixing it and they're trying to figure it out. And then it moves forward and like 10 more years, 50s, 60s. Then it moves forward a little more. And then we get to now where it just kind of evolves to a point where it's like, okay, well, I'm just building off of what the people did right behind me. And I think as dancers, we tend to do that same thing, which is like learning from the Jerry Jordans and like the kind of the Arthur Murray style, where like I'm just getting to it. And
let's not peg Jerry Jordan as only being an Arthur Murray dancer, but
it's like it starts somewhere. It starts
somewhere. In 1995, he cannot say he wasn't dancing.
No. It's not to belittle at all. It's just that like that's that first introduction. Like that's all you have to go off of. Yeah. But then you start digging further, and it's like the perfect phrase I always say it all the time, like the digging in the crates.
Yeah.
Like you got to dig in the crates to figure out more. So as a musician or a dancer, you dig more. You're like, whoa, there's so much back here that I can bring forward with me.
And capital J jazz has, in many parts of the United States at least, and probably the world, has a certain orthodoxy to it. And it would be one thing if it kind of all codified into like some mass. But like it's like they stopped the time machine at 1955 to 1965, and they're like, well, that's jazz.
Yeah.
And so like that's most jazz musicians' expectations and intentions of jazz. And again, without like saying that it's not good music, it's just that's not. We're on a different stop on the time machine,
right?
And so like if you're gonna do a period movie about the 1960s, having everybody in 80s clothes is just it takes you out of it,
right?
And I mean, like if your narrative, like obviously you can do something like avant-garde where you like deliberately have anachronistic things as like an art piece, but that's not what we're talking about. We're just talking about people that don't know the difference or aren't interested in the difference or think that somehow they're making it better by not kind of getting it right. And so like for us, it was all about this niche, this need that needed to be filled of we need a 1930s beat because we're not getting that.
Right. Exactly. And I think that comes out of knowing the knowledge of the past and understanding that like, oh, here's what I see that I like. I'm just going to imply that into the things that I put out there.
It took me 10 years to figure out how the bass player is supposed to play.
Yeah.
I mean, literally it took me band leading for 10 years and knowing, okay, well, I can hire these people and it'll sound good. And these are the people I'll hire, but they won't sound as good. But I don't actually know how to tell them what to do to make it right.
Right.
And it took me literally 10 years.
Yeah.
Because I didn't know what it was about the bass player that was what I wanted. I just knew that certain people knew what to do, and that was it. But that's very much playing in a 1930s band where you're trying to kind of accurately get that 1930s rhythm and do that, but still have it be honest, authentic. I mean, authentic in quotes, sincere, authentic to us kind of music. It's like casting an improv drama that's actually historically accurate. So people have to not only speak in accents that aren't their own, they have to speak in accents that are actually correct for the time and the place, and then improvise while carrying the story forward in the way that the story's supposed to go.
Right.
So it's like an insane Chris Guest movie that's not only a Chris Guest movie, it's a period piece. And there's no second takes because it's happening in front of everyone.
Right.
Because you're asking people to, like when we do a Lindy Focus night.
Hold on, let's pause real quick.
Here comes Bowie. Oh.
Real quick. No worries. Okay, it's okay. We're just going to keep recording.
Anjali, take Bowie upstairs, please.
Anjali? Can you take me to your room and close the door?
He's so excited he's been upstairs the whole time. Like, oh my God, people. He got so excited. Yeah. He's like, I know there's people still here.
Okay.
Well, while you're at it. Thank you.
This is so good. Oh my
It's
God.
great.
It's so interesting to me to hear all this stuff because it's like, it's such a...
You should hand that to her and then stay there.
Suddenly our drinks are fuller.
That's why we need the pots. Also so I can take a goddamn drink.
I love that ice cube floating on top like...
Just the one.
I'm not going down. No.
Just the one.
I'll hold the ship.
Okay.
Remind me never to wear a light blue shirt to a podcast on video. Something like
Dripping, yeah.
That's why I was supposed to do a dark top, but I didn't do it. So, Lindy Focus.
Well, so like a night of Lindy Focus is that's the only time where we like say we're only going to do one particular artist at a night. And that ended up being this really great kind of historical research project every year, and where we really deep dive into that person. And so on a night like that, you're asking, whoever's playing saxophone in front of the Duke Ellington thing, he's like, I need you to kind of be Johnny Hodges, but not just read Johnny Hodges' lines.
Right.
I need you to kind of just be Johnny Hodges.
Yeah.
Or whatever version of yourself is most like Johnny Hodges in this moment. The great alto saxophone player that was one of the kind of main features of the Duke Ellington band. And Duke said the best part of coming to work every day was getting to listen to Johnny Hodges.
Oh my God.
So, and, you know, so, I mean, on any given night, we're asking somebody, I need you to be whatever part of you is consistent and doesn't clash with the 1930s and 40s.
Oh my God. When you guys did Chick Webb for the first time, before I was ever a dancer, I had this Young Ella compilation,
awesome.
and it was my favorite. And I would listen to that thing on repeat. And when I started dancing, that was like my go-to practice album. You guys did Chick Webb night, and Laura was doing all the ad-libs that Ella does in the background. Yeah, you know, like cheering on the band. Yeah. And I was dancing with Mikey, I think this entire set, crying the entire time because
saying
it was like
over and over again.
I was like, I can't believe it. I can't believe I'm hearing these songs. Yeah. Like,
and like that's the thing, like she's not doing an impression.
Right.
Because an impression is reductive, and she's not literally just saying exactly what Ella said. She's kind of like doing the thing.
Right.
And so there's like a line to walk. So like on a night when we're not doing one of those very specific things, I'm asking Albert Alva, our tenor player and clarinet player for the beginning of the Campus 5. Albert loves Tower of Power.
Yeah.
Albert loves, you know, Albert went to see Led Zeppelin when he was a kid. Like, Albert loves all sorts of music. He loves playing jazz flute, which I do not love jazz flute.
That's why you've never seen it at a dance.
Yeah. But like Albert's somebody that has an entire personality and is a full human living, breathing thing. And I'm basically kind of being like, can you kind of find the version of yourself that's most consistent with 1938 and 1941 and do that in 1944? And
that's such a funny thing. I just, sure.
but like it's as like an acting directive when you cast somebody, you're not necessarily asking them to like literally transform. I mean, that's obviously a feat, but you're asking them a lot of times, and if you're doing it right, you're really just saying, be the version of you that kind of fits with the honesty of this scene. And so that's something that like we're asking normally. But like when you're talking about Chick Webb night, Josh Colazzo spent literally 6 months going over those songs, really imbuing himself with Chick Webb. And, you know, you start to find different mannerisms, and it's a lot like an actor practicing an accent where they kind of internalize it, because he's not supposed to play the drum breaks literally note for note, because that's not jazz. That's what classical music is, where you play literally what's on the page, and the question is how you interpret what's on the page without it being inaccurate to what's on the page. Like you can play something that's supposed to be da 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 da, and maybe you play it like a little bit not quite perfectly in time, but you play it with some feeling to like slow down a little bit here. So like that interpretation is valid, but you can't go changing notes.
Right.
But like jazz, the whole point is you're not playing the same notes every time.
And I think in general, it's just putting it in such in a clear light for me, especially our trajectories in the dance world primarily. The idea that we come from a part where we're, again, this is what I was kind of hinting at before, but I kind of like formulated a little bit better. It's like we both come from this kind of version where like we saw it first place, and then so the superficial, and it's like really surface level version of the dance, and then we go like, well, there's got to be more. And then you dig more, and then you dig music, and you see dancers, and you're like, gotta be more. It's like, oh, this dancer's still alive, and they're still around here. And like, you go talk to them, you dance with them, you get as much information, you watch the VHS tapes over and over again. You try to mimic as much as possible at first, which is, again, that surface level. But then you dig deeper, and you kind of understand, like, wow, this is a real person that had real issues and real understandings of life. And if you can find an interview where they talk, like I remember like hearing Dean Collins talk for the first time, which was that like 80s interview. Remember that one? I was like, here's Bob McGee, and he's just like super suave. And I'm like, I did not think he sounded like that. You know, and it's just an interesting thing, because I think you can also kind of mirror it to, like you've been saying it, like an actor. Like method acting and like really figuring out like yourself, or figuring out 10 years how a bass player plays, and how Jonathan took 6 months to like really how Josh took
this punch though.
More punch, please.
More punch, please. So how Josh took 6 months to like really figure out the chick web feel and try to embody that, or try to find the version of himself that can fit into that and understand it and play it when it needed to happen.
Yeah, and
I feel like dance is the same thing.
It's the same thing, and so
especially growing up in LA.
one of the things that I think is really important is it's not about taste, because taste is you like one thing, I like another thing. Sure. We can both be right to us. But to me, the sin isn't bad taste. Because if you like modern country music, I mean, bless your heart, that's ugh. But again, like that's not the sin. The sin is not knowing the difference. Because if nothing is special, if nothing is better or worse, then nothing has value because it's all the same. And so the lack of discernment is the sin. And so a lot of times that deep dive through history is the way that we inform our discernment. And, you know, the problem comes is that when that's a stand-in for discernment. And that's sort of like the end thing. Because basically I've recorded, you know, arrangements that are literal covers almost exactly note for note for 15 years straight on purpose. And that's been my raison d'etre. And the problem is when that kind of like copying or mimicking is a stand-in for discernment and then synthesizing into something else. And the problem isn't the synthesis, it's the synthesis where they don't know anything, so they're just synthesizing from nowhere, and it you know, you got to learn the rules before you know how to break them.
Right, of course.
So like if you just jump to there is no spoon, then reality means nothing. You know, like
totally.
You get that one?
Yeah.
Okay.
I've never seen it, but I know the reference.
Wow, you've never seen The Matrix?
No.
That's impressive.
Yeah. But I know pop culture.
Anything that goes to action immediately, she's like, I'm out.
That's not true. I like the Avengers.
I mean, I think you should go see The Matrix. It's a really wonderfully done film that has a lot of subtext, especially considering its two trans directors. There's a lot of subtext in there.
Okay. All right. Know. You piqued my interest. I will watch it now based on that alone.
That is such a apt way of discovering for myself, like lots of like lightning bolts and fireworks are going off in my head as you're speaking, because like that is absolutely the way I've felt for like the last 20 years is trying to feel like I understand this dance, but coming from LA, how it was so shaped for me and I had to conform to it, and then I've tried to rebel against it, which is that raw Lindy Hop phase that everybody was into, and that's why I attributed myself to that. But
I wasn't into it. I was the dork in the Letterman sweater who's like, I thought I was the real thing. What's wrong with me?
But the thing is you put it in such a perfect way. It's not that you were wrong or I was wrong. It was that the tastes were different, but we all wanted the same thing. We were looking for honest truth within the music and the dance and all of it together.
And for me, like, you know, the metaphors all go back and forth, and like I've always been in search of kind of the real.
Right.
And so like Pete Holmes has this thing, I heard him interviewed, and he's a great comedian I really love. And he has this thing like, I didn't even know what I wanted to be as a comic. I just wanted to be the real deal.
Yeah.
Like the real thing. I don't even know what that is or how to get there or what that means, but I want to be the real thing. And that means honest, sincere, authentic in quotes, because, you know, now pivoting from stand-up comedy to the food documentaries of David Chang and his show Ugly Delicious, which is on Netflix now.
You getting paid for that?
Like,
wait a second.
Yeah, that'll be good for like the 3 viewers.
Where's this ad money coming from?
Don't click away yet. Do that at the end of the show. But no, so Ugly Delicious, the first season opens with a show on pizza. And like I said, my mother's from Naples. Like, there's an orthodoxy about this is pizza and what is not pizza. And it kind of shows you that, well, there's all sorts of different pizzas, and those pizzas are different to them. And, you know, you can say objectively that Domino's is not as good as some artisanal pizza.
Costco.
There you go. But again, like a lot of it comes down to intention and where that's coming from. And you can't necessarily read the intention. So if somebody starts Lindy hopping, literally avoids watching any old clip ever and just somehow manages to Lindy hop and somehow manages to come up with something great, it's like, well, that's cool, but it's also kind of unlikely. But they also may not have the context to know why they're even doing it. So maybe the lack of intention in what they're doing kind of takes away some of the meaning of it.
Yeah.
But the second episode, of that show is all about tacos. We're from Los Angeles. Our tacos are better than yours. Next.
Very true.
But again, like the kind of myth of authenticity that like Al Pastor tacos are Lebanese shawarma that Lebanese immigrants brought, which really started as Turkish doner, and then Armenians fleeing Turkey in the genocide, which that's today when we're filming this.
That's so
apt.
Absolutely apt.
So like this marginalized group and fleeing and bringing their food culture with them, and then and then bringing it to the sheep herders of central Mexico and the DF, like. Holy crap, there's so much there. And like, okay, when does this become a new thing? Like West Coast swing is not Lindy Hop.
Right.
Like that is its own thing. They are like, it's like species that can sort of
coexist
together, but it's not really a viable hybrid.
Yeah, it's sort of time travel. It's like the Lindy Hop. If the Lindy Hop is the main timeline, this is the offshoot where something's got flipped and it went this way, and something got flipped and it went disco, and something got flipped and it went to country. Like it's like all these partnerness. I was just trying to explain this the other day to somebody.
And like to the extent that like it now isn't Lebanese shawarma being made in Mexico, it's Al Pastor tacos.
Right.
And that's its own thing.
My favorite.
It's awesome. Mine too. So, although we got to talk about birria off mic, we got to talk about birria de res. That's like the new
that's like the new big thing. Like she's had it before.
Okay.
She doesn't know quite the difference, but she had her first like Al Pastor taco.
Oh, at the finest gas station in Hollywood.
In Hollywood. It was I think it was I want to say Santa Monica.
Which truck was
La Brea.
La Brea. It's right next to the club.
The three clubs.
And
the
there's
bar.
an Army, Navy surplus store right there.
But what was the truck?
I don't know the name of the truck.
I
don't know.
I can look it up in a little bit.
It's always there though. Like it's been there for years and years.
It's like the only one that's there, and they have tables out and everything. Like it's legit the best because they're like, you want a taco, you want this kind of stuff, okay, that's cool, and quesadilla, cool, okay, burrito or like some eggs, cool. We can make that all in the truck. And it's like, Al Pastor, here, you take the ticket and you take it over there.
You gotta go to the trompo where they carve it off.
Exactly, and then they re-asada it.
Yeah, no, but here's the thing. Like, is that somehow more authentic than East LA tacos going to King Taco and getting their Al Pastor that is not on a spin?
Right.
It's like, that's a pretty authentic taco to me, if you ask me. I mean, like,
hell yeah.
I think a King Taco is like one of the best things in the world. Now, bear in mind, for anyone that doesn't live in Los Angeles, King Taco is not like Burger King. This is like an East LA regional thing that, like, unless you're from East LA, you wouldn't know about.
Well, I mean, not anymore. Like, they're a little bigger. Like, they've gone into double digits now. So there's King Taco 1, and there's King Taco 10, and there's King Taco in Pasadena.
That's right. There is.
I love how this conversation is like.
Once you get LA boys like talking about tacos, we're like, we're going that way.
Are you from California? Yes.
Yeah.
Is your Mexican food better than ours? Of course. There you go. That's how this goes. No, actually, sorry. How do you know someone's from California? Because they won't shut up about how their Mexican food is better.
Exactly.
Yeah, totally.
Exactly. Like, but the thing is, like, we're joking about this, but it's like, it's Mexican food from Mexico.
Right.
And so there's like all of this Mexican American food that we're kind of like poo-pooing and like the Taco Belling of America.
Yeah.
But like there were either Mexican immigrants living in the United States or people that of Mexican heritage who have lived here since before it wasn't Mexico that have their own foodways and that evolved to have iceberg lettuce and cheddar cheese.
Exactly.
And like, so like, at what point are you calling that unauthentic? Now, is somebody like Glenn Bell's copy of the place across the street from his original taco stand, which is still there in San Bernardino? Also, there's a great show on Netflix about Taco Diaries.
I got it. Thank you.
And like Gustavo Arellano is a great food writer that used to work for the OC Weekly and now writes for the LA Times.
And he's OC Weekly.
Oh man, he's done some great writing about this stuff and sort of like not excusing, but sort of like validating that there is some Mexican American food that shouldn't be painted with the Taco Bell brush as somehow the whitewashing of Mexican food, that it's like its own thing, and that just because there's this whitewashed version of it. And so like with a lot of what we're doing, where it's not just the neo swing version, but there's other things like, say, the Harlem dancers that we didn't know about that had kept dancing through the 80s, and that they weren't at the Savoy Ballroom, but they were carrying on a tradition. So like before we think that we somehow found the original version, their version is valid and authentic to itself.
Right.
It's not 1930s Lindy Hop, so we shouldn't confuse them.
Right.
Yeah.
You know,
this reminds me of so much like of another podcast, Revisionist History, and they did one where it was exactly this, like the same topic too, like how like does it devalue it? And it's I'm blanking on his name, and maybe you'll
Malcolm
think of it
Gladwell.
No. Yeah, he's the main person.
Oh, you're talking about the Jeff Buckley Hallelujah episode?
No, I'm talking about the one.
Great episode.
You guys
What's
are
the
on
guy?
such a wavelength
What's the
here.
guy?
This is so good.
Man, he's the white guy who
I know,
sang like all the old black tunes, like in the 50s.
Elvis.
Yeah, but the Elvis episode.
Pat Boone.
Yes,
Pat Boone,
thank you, Pat Boone. So he's like, what does Taco Bell, Pat Boone, and Elvis have in common? And it's sort of like they all have that same thing. It's like they're like the second version that we tend to think are like super classic, but actually, if you dig deeper, it's like, but it doesn't devalue their feeling towards it. But then there's a difference between someone like Pat Boone and someone like Elvis, who will. I forget which one it was in general, but like will attribute it as like it was their song. I'm just doing it because I just want to do it, and they'll do it in this way, and it sounds like fun, and people enjoy it. And it's like Taco Bell's the same way. It's like we're taking this like churro idea and turn it into cinema sticks, or like we're gonna add this stuff, and was like this is not meant to be that. This is meant to be something else.
Well, and really at the end of the day, the issue isn't that Pat Boone is recording Tutti Frutti and neutering it.
For the podcast audience, he just snipped something in the air with his two fingers.
Space work again. But it's not that he's neutering it. It's that if that neutering and that neutered thing erases the original, and so you know,
and that was the difference. Elvis erased original person, a black person singing exactly how he sang, and he never mentioned it. As opposed to Pat Boone was like, "Well, this is their song."
Yeah, and I mean, I believe that episode referenced Big Mama Thornton and Hound Dog and,
exactly.
and her version. Yeah, and I mean, like, those are all the things that we're kind of wrestling with, and yet there's still this thing of like, if I could get Count Basie to play like 1937 Count Basie, then that's what I would want. But the thing is, Count Basie didn't play like 1937 Count Basie in 1950 or 57,
right?
And then the whole thing about jazz, where there is jazz that continues to live and breathe, and it's authentic and it's sincere, but it is not a dance beat, and it does not feel right to do the kind of Lindy Hop that people like Frankie and Dean Collins were doing, that we are modeling ourselves after mostly.
Right.
And I don't think there's anything wrong with saying that, like, I want to dance like the 1930s and 40s, for as problematic as that era is and laden with all those issues. That's just aesthetically the thing that I like.
Sure.
And there's nothing. John Hodgman has a great podcast, Judge John Hodgman, and one of the basic settled laws is people like what they like.
Right.
And so it's never about whether one thing is better or not per se. It's about whether it's informed and whether it means something. And like, so for me, like, I like 1930s and 40s music, and I felt like there's a real problem with later jazz musicians not having any awareness of this earlier style and any ability to render it properly, not because they're not good musicians, but because it's just not a thing in their repertoire or a thing that they're trained in. And I do think there's a real problem with jazz education and the way that it's been made into an orthodoxy, that the kind of Ken Burns jazz version of jazz is what exists. And, you know, if you talk to somebody like Christy J. Wells, who's just a fantastic musicologist, and their book on Chick Webb recently got published.
Oh, I didn't know that. Okay,
yeah,
cool.
Yeah, I want to check that out.
There's all sorts of things about jazz criticism and the stories that we tell about jazz that are actually sort of like their own racist tropes, even if you don't realize.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
And so, like, the making fun of white jazz musicians as not authentic enough or not raw enough is like rooted in white people's stereotypes of black people as being savages. So like jungle jazz, which is very like, you know, that means is in reference to like the Duke Ellington music of like the late 20s and early 30s. There's like a thing that they're saying, and they're like, on the one hand, they're saying the black musicians are better, but they're also like doing it, they're better in sort of like for racist reasons.
It's like a backhanded compliment.
Yeah. So like there's so much richness, and I don't think I I'm spilling the tea to say that had Lindy Focus happened, but for the pandemic, that we probably would have done Mary Lou Williams.
Oh wow!
And, wow,
that's amazing.
And Michael Gamble probably would have transcribed all of it.
Wow,
because he is one of her biggest fans, and
that's incredible. Oh
gosh. And so I was trying to kind of pin down a set list. That's kind of how the workflow of Lindy Focus works, because I'm leading the bands. He's kind of the overarching director, and we collaborate on who we're hiring. We collaborate on kind of like what nights we're going to do and that stuff. But when it comes to like picking the tunes, I'm picking the tunes, and then he might go, you missed this one. And be like, oh my God, I did. You're right. Okay. Or whatever. And obviously, and also with Laura Windley, because she's got to sing this stuff. So we want to make sure that she's getting material that she feels good on. And she's, again, like a world-class swing DJ. So she knows how to rock a party. Yeah. And that's the thing. We need to do a historical deep dive that's reflective of kind of the breadth of this person's oeuvre. I can't say that word. Their career, yet that's still a really great night of Lindy Hop dance music.
Right.
So, but like we were going to do Mary Lou Williams. And so I bought a couple books about Andy Kirk's band, who she mostly wrote for first. And the problem is we don't know with 100% certainty which tunes are her arrangements.
Oh, really?
We think we know a bunch of them, and she wrote many of them, but like you get down to it, and there's like a couple like real bangers out of Andy Kirk's band, and you're like, oh, that's attributed to somebody else. Oh, well, then that's not going to go on Mary Lou Williams' night because she didn't do it. Yeah. She also did Roll 'Em for Benny Goodman, one of the all-time jams.
Is that due to like mislabeling, or is that due to some like shitty undertones?
That's not necessarily due to malfeasance, either sexism or racism. That's just the way it was, that things didn't necessarily get attributed that same way. There's a great YouTube series going on right now going through Benny Goodman from 1934 to 46 with Lauren Schoenberg, who's at Juilliard and a great saxophone player and historian, Hal Smith, our good friend, the drummer Hal Smith, and a good friend of mine, Nick Rossi, a guitar player from San Francisco, where they're literally going song by song, 4 songs, a YouTube video through Benny Goodman's recorded history.
Wow, that's crazy.
And like even they're like, well, the discographies list that this is a Fletcher Henderson arrangement. The 3 of us all know this is a Jimmy Mundy arrangement. I mean, it's plain as the nose on your face.
So there's like a whole nother level to like the nerdyism that we're even talking about right now that they're going to.
By the way, when you talk about like, how swing music is versus other forms of jazz, everything is a continuum. Everything is an evolution. Everything is not the same all the time. And that particular series is so amazing because you're seeing 1934 click into 1935, click into 1936, and the way that it's kind of solidifying into the thing we think of as swing, but there's still sort of different flavors and accents in it as it's coalescing, and how those kind of get bred out to be consistent, is really fascinating. Yeah. And so it's just been neat to kind of deep dive through that. But getting back to Mary Lou Williams real quick, so we don't know exactly what's her. So I got Andy Kirk's biography, and I got the Oxford collection on Mary Lou Williams. I don't remember what it's called.
Yeah.
And again, like right when I was doing this is when the pandemic hit, and I was like, all right, well, I guess I don't need to come up with a set list yet.
Fuck this book, fuck that book.
But the thing is, like the introduction to that Mary Lou Williams thing from the Oxford Jazz Library, or whatever it's called, is all about how Andy Kirk's band gets all of this crap for being a kind of relatively sweet band, despite being a black band, and thus us dumb white jazz critics who are telling you this like history are saying that that's somehow less black of them, which is like super racist in itself.
Yeah, it's awful.
And that like it erases the fact that black bands were making sweeter music for their own audiences, not to please white people per se, but even their own audiences, that there was a pop music element to all of that, and that to make that A, lesser, and B, also somehow not black, is erasing the history of black people making music for themselves that is not the hottest, fastest thing. Right. And that hottest, fastest thing being the raw thing is like in itself kind of grounded in this like thing of like, that somehow the less evolved, less sophisticated thing is better.
Right.
That's a funny thing because of that exact topic is part of many topics that is in the play turned into the Netflix movie, Ma Rainey's Black Bottom. And that's exactly what Chadwick Boseman's character goes through. And it's such an interesting thing because they do pose it in that way. And then you saying that, I'm like, it's still that thing that I felt when I saw that this person got music stolen from them, and then like got given to a white band. And then I'm like, oh wait, but that has its own thing as well, because if you can't deny that, then you deny that person. But knowing that is part of that. Yeah. So as long as you know it, it kind of can reinforce this idea that like, okay, now we know what we're talking about. Now we can move forward a little bit more.
Yeah, and also like that. There's a reductive nature to some of the superficial analysis that people are doing that's racist in its own ways,
right?
And so it's not quite as easy to make some of the generalizations that some people make about this.
It's
stuff.
not a black or white thing. It's definitely there's a nuance to it, and there's a more to it.
Yeah, and I mean obviously like the history of jazz is like the African American experience, and that's where it comes from, and that's like the central part of it. But New Orleans is the northernmost port of the Caribbean.
Right.
So there's a Caribbean element there that's not necessarily African per se, but it's kind of Afro-Caribbean. But then there's also a Latin influence and a Hispanic influence. And there were also Creoles making music at the time. So there's other ethnicities that are entering into it. There's the fact that, like, especially in New York and Chicago, you have so many Jewish Americans, Italian American immigrants that were obviously not as disadvantaged as the black musicians, but they had their own disadvantages and prejudices that they were bringing their own kind of things into music. And like as a guitar player, the history of jazz guitar is so much Italian American, and it comes from Neapolitan string music. And like things like mandolin technique, and it's like all that goes in, and then you have the klezmer influence that comes in, and you don't have Bimirbis Duchesne and sing and stuff like that, unless you have that klezmer tradition. So like it's super rich, and it's like it's not, you can't just like jump to it's just black stuff, because that's dumb and that's simple in its own way. You gotta say it's this giant black thing with all of these other little things that are populating it, and that it's this rich thing, and you need to honor the whole thing, and you don't want to be reductive about it.
Right.
And obviously, you really want to make sure you get the black part right, because that's the part that's so often ignored. That's the part that we're having a problem with. That's those are the lives that haven't mattered to certain people.
Exactly. Yeah.
But it's okay. Make sure that matters, and then make sure we get all the nuance to it. And obviously, like, people forgetting the Italian American tradition is not the problem of what's going on in jazz. But it's richer, and it's like German immigrants came into Mexico and Texas, and that's why Texas beer and Mexican beer is German beer, right? And that's why Texas barbecue is sausage. That's why banda music in Mexico has tuba, because of German marching bands. Right. Like that cross cultural pollination happening is like super awesome and fascinating.
It really is, yeah.
And whether it's tacos or music, like the big miss is if you look at the copy and go, that's the real thing,
right? Or
not the copy, the bad impression, and go, that's the real thing. And so that's really what all of this for me boils down to, is we were getting at best a condescending impression of like, well, we'll play Take the A Train, but it's going to sound like Miles Davis 1951 or 1957. And you're like, that's great, but that doesn't feel like the music we need to
move.
Yeah.
You know.
And I think in that same respect, it's like you've gone through it now, almost all of your musical career, but I think I'm going to kind of wrap around and do some other stuff as well.
Yeah, please.
But so like I really want to know, and it may sound like a kind of superficial thing, but like you've done this in a very big way with Lindy Focus, and Lindy Focus being a big dance event that happens during New Year's. And one of the big main events is you and your band of all-star musicians from across the United States playing as these major bands from the era of 1930s and 1940s. Which one for you, if you had to pick one, was your favorite to do?
That's really hard. I can tell you the one that's the most surprising.
Okay.
And that's Duke Ellington.
Why's that?
Okay.
Because Duke is not necessarily by a lot of people thought of as the great dance band. Norma Miller does not wax poetically about how when Duke Ellington came to town, they changed everything.
Right.
Yeah.
Basie came in. And again, like talking about this thing about that YouTube thing about that Lauren Schoenberg is doing on Benny Goodman, you hear 1936, 1937, the swing starting to solidify. The next kind of epochal change happens is when Basie comes to town, and the southwestern, I mean, at that point, Kansas was considered the Southwest, even though it's the Midwest. But like that southwestern sound of Texas tenors and people from Oklahoma and Kansas and Missouri, those people coming to New York and their relaxedness and coolness really kind of took over all of that.
Yeah.
And basically, like, the next step of jazz is just making that the default. And so that's why kind of like later and later styles of jazz keep getting cooler and cooler.
Right.
But it's also why the beat's so far back. You're like, where is this? So like for me, Duke Ellington is not the thing that I think about the most normally when I'm DJing a swing dance. And he's very idiosyncratic, whether it's his own compositions or the compositions of people in his band, whether it's his own arrangements or that of people like Billy Strayhorn that he worked closely with. There's a weird funkiness to Duke Ellington and his tonalities. And he did a lot of his time was spent at the Cotton Club where he was a show band. And that's a different thing than playing a night of Lindy Hop at the Savoy Ballroom. And so there's just all of these colors. It's like this huge panoply.
Wow. That's really cool to play with.
Well, but then to sort of like distill the version of that makes like a perfect night of Lindy Hop music that somehow gets the mooch.
Right.
Wah, 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 wah. Oh, that's St.
It's very popular in but very popular in the burlesque world is all of those tunes.
You know, like the kind of funeral
Duke.
dirge
Exactly,
sound, and that what was then called jungle jazz style, and then you have like kind of mid to late 30s Duke Ellington, which is its own thing, and then you have like the kind of golden era called the Blanton Webster Band, and that's where you get Cottontail and you get a bunch of the other favorites, and then the stuff just right after that, like Take the A Train. And then there's like this whole period in kind of mid to late 40s where Duke is like starting to kind of get a bigger band. And that's where you start to get that rockin' and rhythm, that later rockin' and rhythm that everybody loves.
Loud ass sound.
Yeah, and super high note trumpet from Cat Anderson. And then there's like 50s Duke, which is again, it's like its own thing, and then even 60s Duke. So like there's all these colors, and the thing is like I've been avoiding 50s jazz orthodoxy in my music because that's the thing that most jazz musicians do that is not right for what we're doing.
Right.
I could take a pause real quick because I remember you were like, you came to me, it's like, what song do you want to hear? Like, I don't know. It was something, it was like, tell me a song and we'll learn it. And I was like, this one. And you're like, don't play anything past this. And I was like, okay. But I get it. Through this conversation, I see the reasoning why. It's like it's like going up to an Italian person, there's an Italian cook, like does like Neapolitan, like let's put it that way. It's like, I want you to make a pizza like they do in Korea. And it's like they're like, fuck you.
Sweet potatoes? No.
Corn? No, it's not even that far. The way that Italian American immigrants in New York City changed to the land of plenty that we were in, like that would be partially unrecognizable to a real Italian because they're like, we don't have that much meat at home.
Right.
Like, how do you have that?
Yeah, it's all bad.
Oh my God, poverty eating in Southern Italy.
That's what I'm saying.
He talks about it all the time.
It's poor people food. I talk about it all the time. But I think in general, like the thing that I'm getting at is all of that is to say that like at least you recognize it. So it's not that it's not that you necessarily are like going no for no sake. You're actually saying it's like, but I don't like playing.
Yeah, but just this era, and I think that's important about artists in general is that artists change. They ebb and they flow, and they okay, I did that thing. I don't want to do that thing anymore. I'm moving on to this other thing that inspires me, and that's the epitome of an artist. That's what they do.
I spend most of my career ignoring that Count Basie had another 30 years of his career because that. So what famously for anybody that doesn't know this. Count Basie, great big band leader. Again, when he came to town, he changed jazz.
Yeah.
Norma Miller says it like, oh, Basie, Basie.
Yeah. I mean, it's a big thing in the Kempers jazz thing.
Yeah.
Really funny. There's a guy on TikTok who's doing these jazz histories. And, oh, my gosh, it's so sad because he's trying to do it from a very enlightened perspective, but he doesn't know anything about jazz.
Oh, no.
And so he's like saying these broad generalities where you're like, you're not getting it right, and I appreciate that you're trying to like do this, but not even close.
Yeah.
And it's because he basically said that, like, swing music was by white people for white people, and it was entirely a whitewashed thing.
Oh,
and it was made only during World War II for patriotic purposes, and that, like, it was used as propaganda. And you're like, yes, there are articles where the State Department used jazz as a thing. That is not why Count Basie recorded "Jumpin' at the Window." No, and like, I ranted in the comments at it. The poor guy. I mean, he's 21. Like,
he's just trying to make a name for himself.
No, but the best thing was
that 1 cent.
Somebody commented, like, "What about all the black artists that made swing music?
Yeah.
What about Louis Armstrong? What about Count Basie and Duke Ellington?" And he made a response video, which was,
"Oh no,
I think that's a really good point, but I think Louis Armstrong and Count Basie are really later vocal jazz." And I was like, well, just because you've only heard Hello Dolly doesn't mean that Louis Armstrong didn't almost single-handedly invent all of jazz vocabulary.
Yeah.
I need this now.
Now I need to go find this TikTok.
I need to find it, and I need Jonathan to do a duet right next to him and just react.
Just a react video.
No. If nothing else, that our discussion about how nuance is important. TikTok is the worst possible place for this. 15-second, 60-second sound bites. There's no room for nuance.
There can be, but like not like I am the truth.
No, it's very generalized.
And your comments are limited to 150 words. Ask me how I know. Ask me how I know. Because I wrote 9 of them in response.
Oh my God.
But like, here's the thing, like, if somebody who doesn't know anything about what they're talking about just thinks of Louis Armstrong as this Hello Dolly Uncle Tom figure, holy crap, have you erased the centralness of Louis Armstrong to almost all of jazz history. But you're just pointing out that you literally don't know anything about what you're talking about.
Right.
And again, the SID isn't having bad taste.
Right.
It's not knowing the difference.
Yeah.
That being said, Duke Ellington was one of your surprising. Out of all of them, which one was the hardest? As in, like, Chick Webb night, Duke Ellington.
So when I mentioned that Duke worked at the Cotton Club, and so there was a period in his career where he was a show band. There's a specific art to that. And one of the bands that came in after him was Jimmy Lunsford's band.
Right.
And so there is a showmanship level that is inherent in Lunsford's approach that means everything is way harder than it needs to be.
Right.
And like, not only that, but they would have had choreography. They would have had all this stuff. And they had several. Tommy Steves is one of them, or Steve. Oh man, I can't remember his name. I'm just blanking. I mean, I can tell you who was on what Benny Goodman session in 1939 and what Count Basie session in 1938, but like I'm forgetting this guy's name, which is so frustrating. Or that time that I mixed up Sweets Edison and Buck Clayton because I was thinking of the Benny Goodman Count Basie octet session of 1940 when I was really talking about Jam on the Blues from 1941, and that's obviously Sweets, but I was thinking of Buck because anyway.
Be honest, did you reach climax just now just by doing that? Almost.
Anyway, so my nerdism does not have any bounds.
Really good punch though, right? This punch though.
That was impressive, but also like hilarious.
That was the filter kind of opening up just a little more than it should. No, but like so they had these high note trumpet players that literally could play like several notes above what anyone else could play. And it's kind of like the mile that as soon as somebody breaks the 5-minute mile, then somebody realizes you can make a 4-minute mile. And like, it's these kind of technical human achievements. So like they were playing screaming high notes. Like Armstrong really took it up a certain level in like the first part of the 30s. And then these two guys took it up even another notch. And then like somebody like Roy Eldridge and Cat Anderson in the 40s really took it up another notch.
So Jimmy Lunsford night, is that the first time that Jim came through to Lindy Focus? Was that
and
that's the reason why you brought him, right?
That's right.
Yeah. Well, so one of the things that's really important to say about Lindy Focus and the way we staff Lindy Focus is it's not about having the best band because there's no such thing. Because for every person you put in a chair, there's several other people that you're not bringing to Lindy Focus.
Right.
And so there's a certain combination of variables that you need to have of versatility, of utility, of who you pick. And representation is something that is really important to us, and we're doing our best to find people and learn about new people so that we can do better with that. But as Michael Gamble often points out, like we're talking about the sub niche of a sub niche of a sub niche. So like finding people that are as nerdy about this as that need to be to do it this level is impossibly hard. So we're already talking about the smallest little pool of jazz musicians on earth, and it's obviously a challenge, but we're working on trying to do that. But the thing is, like, for every person we hire, that means, okay, well, which trumpet player am I going to hire? Am I going to hire Gordon Au? Am I going to hire Noah Hawker? Am I going to hire John Eric Kelso, Ben Pulser, Jim Ziegler? It's like, okay, well, I've got a spot for 2 of those guys.
Right.
Yeah.
Which ones am I going to hire? Like, and what is it that they bring to this that is more useful than somebody else or better suited to our very specific needs?
Yeah.
So when Lunsford Night came around, the question of is, well, Lunsford had all of these great male vocal tunes and almost no female vocal tunes, by the way. So Laura had almost nothing to do that.
Yeah.
That was a night off.
She played glockenspiel, actually. And her and John Tigert sang with Jim in a trio.
That's right. I remember that. Yeah.
That was beautiful.
But like immediately you go, the person that I can think of best on earth that does that style of male vocal singing, Jim Ziegler.
Yeah.
Totally.
And so it's like, okay, now how do we fit him on trumpet? Like, what does that mean? Because Jim plays trumpet in a very specific way. How do we accommodate that? And then we're going to, we got to, so yeah.
It's such a crazy thing. But you have a crazy story about that same year. That's why I also bring it up as well. I forgot that was
I don't know which one you're referencing.
That you met him on the plane and he was so excited to go to Linny.
Oh, yeah. And I remember that excitement carrying over to seeing him on stage. I have seen Jim play for years and years and years, being local. But seeing him up on stage that night and seeing the just joy that he was exuding, I have never seen that. And I kept telling Mikey,
I've never seen Jim dance on stage before, and he was dancing.
Yeah,
I was like,
Jim's
what
dancing.
the hell just happened?
I have never seen him so happy. This is amazing.
Yeah, well, I mean, so the funny thing is, like, the way that I have a regular gig, when I have a regular gig, it's 3 hours, 3 sets. I'm going to play 30 songs. You've got a dance contest? Great. I'm going to lose 3 songs. Right. Like, the more things that happen in a night, I'm losing material that I'm going to get to play, unless we extend the window of the night, and then it's going to cost me more to get people to stay later, whatever all those variables are.
Oh, we know those. We've all dealt together.
I'm so sorry about all of those emails that I've sent.
I mean, but that's
I wasn't at my best.
That's how you learn. That's how you learn.
No, but like, for me, like, I get to play 33 songs, maybe 30 songs, maybe 33 if I move through them quickly. That's a very limited window. The amount of experimentation, the amount of chances I'm going to take, the amounts of things that are not 100% right down the middle of the lane of what I want to do, I don't have time for that. So, like, when I started the Campus 5 in 2002, we thought it would be sort of a pastiche of like different things. There'd be like a Django tune, and then like a Louis Jordan tune, and then like a Dixieland tune, and then a swing tune, and then like we thought it would be all these things. And it very quickly coalesced into the things that every gig to gig sounded the same and sounded good, which was small group riff tunes, things like Goodman Sextet tunes, Illinois Jacquet small group tunes, and that kind of coalesced into a thing. And the reason that continues to kind of be the style that we more or less work in is because to do something that's not in that is a risk.
Right.
And like, when I'm not playing Duke Ellington Night, I don't have time to drag the entire floor to a halt to play the mooch.
Yeah.
And if I were a swing dancer in that audience, I don't want to dance to that. Now, we got to get into this whole thing of swing dancers' expectations and how they are an entirely postmodern and artificial thing that is not authentic to the swing era.
I love it.
Exactly.
And in the same way that I'm totally fine that my al pastor tacos are not actually Lebanese shawarma, I am actually fine with the fact that the expectations of how many songs and how danceable they are modern Lindy Hoppers have. We demand so much more than what they did back in the day. And so, like I said, I don't have time to mess around and do like something that's not in my core value set. Like, I got to do everything on brand, on what I believe in.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And it shows every
Totally.
time. And I think it's also really, really, really good to see when you're able to do something like Lindy Focus, where you're like 5 nights a week, 5 nights in a week, and it's just fucking crazy because I know how much all of you have worked and continue to work during that week. But then it's another thing to see someone like Jim, who we've seen so many times, just cutting loose and actually having fun. Someone like Albert, cutting loose, having fun. Someone like Chris actually yelling at us. Like Chris Dawson, like the most mild-mannered, yes, hello, how are you? And like, yeah, like this, like on piano. And then all of a sudden, this mother runs off stage, grabs you or Irina, and like
and then jump in the jam.
And half the fucking crowd just goes, I didn't know he could dance too. Holy shit!
Well, the fact that I am one of us, absolutely informs what we do. And when I said that that's like a postmodern thing, when you listen to a remote broadcast from the Savoy Ballroom, there's a waltz, there's a novelty number, there's a ballad, there's all this stuff, because you got to think about it. If you watch a movie from 1982 and there's a b-boy in it, and it's in some city other than New York and probably outside of the South Bronx, they didn't exist there yet. That was not a thing. That was a culture that started in this very particular place, and that it very quickly expanded. But it's not like you had real b-boys across America. Maybe you saw somebody that like saw a movie and like was doing their bad impression of it. But like in the same way, Lindy Hop was not like this thing that was just instantly across America. There was no YouTube. There was no mass communication in that same quick way. So like, even at a place like the Savoy Ballroom, you had all of those hardcore Lindy Hoppers, but they were almost like the crew that was there to entertain all the regular people that were there on dates.
Right, exactly.
You know? And so like our modern, whether it's from the 90s on or you think of it from the 80s on or whatever, we've been DJing for ourselves for 40 years now.
Yeah.
And we've been cherry picking all of recorded history for the best social dance music out of all of the stuff that was recorded, and that's our expectation now.
Just remember that. Everybody out there listening to that, just remember that feeling that Jonathan just said, because that is so vital to the whole understanding of what our modern scene is. It is, and I mean it heavy, and I also mean it lightly. It's cherry picking. Like, that is a great term for it. It is exactly that, and like it's literally picking out your favorite lists. And then just dancing that over and over again.
And extrapolating. It's underrepresenting and overrepresenting at the same time.
Definitely.
It's like that population dynamics thing where if the bird with the weird beak gets marooned on the island with one other bird, and that trait is going to get replicated in a totally unrepresentative fashion. But see, the thing is, when I started swing dancing in 2000, those were the expectations I had, and those were the expectations that, by and large, most kind of straight-ahead jazz musicians would just totally not get or even be aware of. And even good swing bands have trouble doing because some of them end up being somewhat inhumane. And some of the emails that we were joking about exchanging are just about like, no, I can't play this many contest songs.
Exactly.
We're going to die. Like,
absolutely. I completely agree. And that's part of the reason why it's like it's funny, because I'm like I'm trying to like be like, come on, but like I've seen you do this before. It's like, yeah, and it hurts. Like it's like this isn't Spotify right now that you could just be like that, and then when it's done, it's like it's 5 to 15 people that are like playing really hard for this shit.
And playing their hearts
like,
out.
Yeah. And when we talk about like the fact that I don't play ballads as a rule, like we don't play ballads because nobody wants to social dance to ballads and Lindy Hop dance. Is that the best thing in Lindy Hop, that we can't have one slow song? Maybe that should be a thing. And so like events like Slow Dance Soiree in Rochester, I know Michael Gamble has been deliberately kind of like adding one kind of down tempo number. Because he's like, I want that to be represented in what we do.
And a whole
definitely.
after party after that.
Yeah. And like, so we can kind of like push and pull a little bit on what we want out of this. But I accept that what my expectations are somewhat artificial. And at this point, the ways that I try to like push back on that is mostly just for humanity's sake. So like one of the things that I would assume I'm known for is the talking I do in between songs. At
for sure.
And there's a reason that I started that. And it's not because I know a bunch and I wanted to like information dump on people. That's also true.
Yeah, let's be honest, right?
Educate the masses.
But it came because that first year I bought literally $2,000 worth of charts on my own dime.
Wow.
And because there was no Lindy Focus Kickstarter project yet. And buying the charts for that was really challenging. And frankly, we didn't even get enough. Like, we had to do some small group tunes mixed in and stuff. But like, we had an hour sound check rehearsal for 2 hours and 30 minutes of music.
Jesus.
And so that's obviously, you can't play through all of it because if you're rehearsing some of it. So literally that first year, we're sight reading some of those tunes. And even now we've got 2 hours of rehearsal and I'm sending people parts in advance. We're still sight reading that. Yeah. So if you play trumpet, you need to know or have an idea that one of your mutes is going to need to be needed, because you may only have a couple of seconds to go reach for it. And if it's on the floor, you might not have time to dive down. And then you dive down and then you're back up at your music stand because you were standing up. And then you're like, wait, where were we? And the same thing with like the sax doubles, like you need to have your clarinet handy or whatever.
It's such a fucking crazy thing to think about. I didn't even think about that.
And like maybe there's some really crazy thing that you'll want to spend the chorus that you're not playing because there's some chorus where you're just laying out behind a trumpet. So maybe you're going to want to look at something else to cheat. We didn't have that. And so I started trying to like stretch a little bit between songs. Now, playing a place like Rusty's here in LA, dead air is like the worst thing. Like, we know dead air because that sounds like it sounds unintentional.
Right.
Sure. Yeah.
But like if you talk and you fill that space with something of value, it's not a problem.
Yeah, of course.
Totally.
Like, we go through that all the time. Like teaching classes in general, like it feels weird when we're quiet, but in reality, it's kind of okay. But also we have like things we say, but also doing this podcast as well. It's like, I don't want to take that much time because dead air.
Well, sometimes it takes a beat to think about what you're going to say and make sure you're being thoughtful with your words. And it's that same idea.
Well, I think it's time and place as well, but like also the things that you do, especially at Lindy Focus, by like giving time to your band, but also giving something worthwhile to people.
Yeah, context.
They really do fucking listen to you.
Well, I mean, so what happened is my wife Rachel came with me to that year of Lindy Focus, and basically she came every year until we had Charlie. And hopefully now that Charlie's old enough, he can start coming with us. And so she can get to come back to Lindy Focus. Yeah. But she basically told me after during the first night on band break, she's like, "Hey, that talking thing's really working." And again, it wasn't because she was like saying, "I personally think this is good." She was like, "The couple in front of me shushed each other because they wanted to listen or whatever it was."
Yeah.
And I was like,
absolutely.
"Okay." But yeah, like that was literally just about buying time. And I have a kind of spongy memory, so I would just remember, and whatever facts I could say, and whether it was about the original artists, something about the song, or who wrote it, who played on it, or whether it came to like the context of what these songs mean to our community now.
Yeah.
Those are all super important because like I don't like Shiny Stockings. You're probably like, Jonathan, you don't like Frankie Manning's favorite song? What kind of horrible human being you are? And it's like, yeah, I don't like 50s Count Basie. That's the thing.
Sure.
If you guys haven't gotten anything from this podcast.
and the thing is, it's like, well, that's because Frankie kept dancing into the 50s and heard Count Basie play that song. And so to him, that wasn't like the abandoning of the swing sound that so essential. That was just what Basie sounded like in the 50s. And that's his favorite song. And like when I get to play Shiny Stockings at Lindy Focus, number one, I am no longer validating Shiny Stockings as being my thing, as a thing I am proud of or I like. I am saying this is in tribute to Frankie Manning, and this is a communal thing that we all share.
Right.
And so the onus of like not wanting to go out of my comfort zone is off me. And then more importantly, because who cares about my comfort zone? More importantly, we get to have this communion together of this thing that reminds us of this person who means so much to all of us.
Right.
And like one of the things I don't think I've ever told this on a podcast because I've only done 3.
It's so famous.
But I feel like a comedian who's like, I've never told this on a podcast before. You're getting a real scoop because I'm on all of them. Because that's
I mean, you literally are right now.
Fair point.
There's like 3 of them.
But no, like I never got to play for. I played for Frankie Manning 3 times, and at no point did I ever go say hi to Frankie because Josh was not on any of those gigs, and I was not proud of what we sounded like without him.
Yeah,
and because that wasn't the thing I wanted to do.
Right.
And so I never said hi to Frankie. I never met him. Oh, wow. And he was, he wasn't teaching in LA as much when I started. I think some of the people that started before me would have like gone to PBDA to take lessons with him.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But I deeply regret not getting to spend that time with him. And like the one time we had Josh, it was in Denver, and then Frankie, like, his flight was delayed, and so he kind of got sick waiting around in the airport, and so, like, he didn't come to the dance after he taught his things. So, like, I don't even have as deep a connection to Frankie as so many of my dancer friends, as Hillary does, because Hillary did take lessons with Frankie. But, like, I know what Frankie means to me, even not having had that personal connection and where I met him.
Yeah.
But I know what he means to Lindy Hop. I know what he means to me. I know what it means to all the people that knew him. And so when I play Shiny Stockings, it's about something more.
Right.
And it's the same thing like when Dawn died. God, knock on wood.
We're not talking
about sugar. We're not talking about sugar.
No.
But like when I started playing Splanky, when Dawn passed, in her honor, it's like, man, I really don't like Splanky. Splanky's like that sound that I don't want in swing music because it's that 50s Basie thing.
Yeah.
But it's like, damn it, there are more important things. Like it's Dawn friggin' Hampton, you know?
Exactly.
Well,
like, and honoring her is this thing that we all share. And like she came out to the last time we played at Midsummer Night Swing at Lincoln Center, and Ryan and Heather brought her out, and we had dinner with her afterwards. And it's like, this is one of the living legends of Lindy Hop, and honoring her now that she's gone, like, play Splanky. And so, like, the context to me is, obviously the historical context, so much of the racist history of what we're dealing with, so many of the inequities, so many of the really important stories behind that stuff. But then there's also this whole nother layer of, like, our world that we share, that like how many of us have been in an airport with Sylvia Sykes at this point? You know, how many people have gotten your flight delayed and Sylvia Sykes has helped you get it fixed?
Absolutely.
Totally.
Have you been taken to the Sky Club by Sylvia Sykes?
I think this is such a good part of everything we're saying, because the communal experience and the community experiencing something is very, very always like such a touching thing for all of us, is that if we can kind of understand it in one level, then it kind of grows and grows and grows. And you talking about like, you know, giving this information, because not only do you think it's really important, but like there's purpose behind it as well. And I think one of the things that I felt that fits in all those categories is the story about Charlie.
Oh yeah.
Your son, and how he was born, how he came to this world, and I'll let you tell the story, obviously, but like every time I hear that song, I cannot stop myself from crying, and I cannot.
It's Charlie's song now.
Yeah, it's Charlie's
song. It always
song
is. Like every time we hear it.
From that moment, it meant so much more. It was already something because that song is so incredible.
Yeah.
But then the experience put behind it, that is now a communal thing, like for everybody to experience, is something very special to me, and I would love for you to talk about it.
So during this pandemic, you know, it's been hard.
Yeah.
I mean, it's been hard for all of us, and I know my emotions have been just under the surface this whole time. Like if I see a movie or I see things, like I'm crying instantly.
Yeah.
And so you're asking me to do that again. And so that's okay. That's okay. I'm going to start crying at the beginning as opposed to choking up at the most perfect optimal time during that speech. No, what it was is we were doing Chick Webb's night, and the song Clap Hands Here Comes Charlie is one of his like absolute barn burners. And it was enough of it's a weird Broadway song. Like you can watch Ben Vereen doing it in its original kind of way from Broadway on YouTube. But it's just like a it's like it's 300 beats per minute. It's like it's almost fast for the sake of being fast, and for that reason, like it wasn't a song that necessarily resonated with me, but I felt like that was one of his, you know, the songs associated with him. So we should do it, and especially a perfect set ender. And, you know, I picked that 3 or 4 months before my son was born.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. But my son is named Charles Frederick Stout, and he's named after Charlie Christian and Freddie Green, two very important guitar players. Charlie Christian, who made electric guitar popular when he was a part of the Benny Goodman Sextet, and sort of his adopting of it is what made people take notice. Because there are people that had done it slightly before him, but those didn't land the way he did. And overnight, electric guitar was the thing. And so all of the rest of 20th century music history is about the electric guitar for the most part. So it goes back to Charlie. And the band that he played in, the Benny Goodman Sextet, is basically my favorite band. Benny Goodman's my favorite band leader because I love his big band, I love his small groups, I love his trios with and quartets with Hamp and Teddy Wilson, and I love the panoply of musicians that he worked with. But the Benny Goodman Sextet, like the Desert Island, okay, that. Although strictly speaking, there is a podcast that you can listen to where you can hear 10 of my Desert Island discs.
That's the second one.
Recorded by my friend Sarah Spoon. You should check that out. It's called Desert Island Jams. Listen to it now. Not now, after this is done.
After this podcast.
But like my favorite, my literal Desert Island song is All-Star Jump, which is the Metronome All-Stars. It's 1 o'clock jump, but Benny plays on it. Charlie Christian plays on it. Anyway, Charlie Christian is my hero. When I play electric guitar, all I actually want to do is just sound like Charlie Christian. I don't exactly. I sound more like Charlie Christian than almost anybody because no one actually wants to sound as much like him as I do. So like it's not because I'm better. It's because there are literally only a few people that even want to sound that much like Charlie Christian. And so like I would just, if I could be a carbon copy of that would be 100 better than the best version of myself.
Win.
But Charlie Christian is my hero. He's also a black man who got tuberculosis and had lived out the last year of his life in an all-black hospital, segregated. Now, I have done research to see if it's fair to say that his inequitable medical treatment led to his untimely demise. I don't think that's fair because most people died of tuberculosis at that point.
Yeah.
But like here he is, he's got Benny Goodman's money. Benny paid for his hotel or for his hospital stay. Even with all of Benny Goodman's money, he's in an all-black hospital. So like the fact that he's got this incredibly short meteoric career and is so influential, and the fact that he was treated differently is something that I felt was really important for my son to know about, because my son isn't going to get stopped in a traffic stop and have to worry about getting shot the same way that someone with a darker skin color does. And much like Harry Potter, also problematic in its own ways. Thanks, J.K. Rowling. When Harry says to his son, Albus Severus Dumbledore, you're named for 2 of the bravest headmasters, like I really believe that like the story of Charlie Christian and the fact that he's treated differently, this is something that's going to be part of my son's life, and it was really important to me. And the same thing with Freddie Green, because Freddie Green doesn't have that same history per se of being mistreated in that particular way, but he was this guy that is the. Like, how like it's not tissues, they're Kleenex. It's not a photocopy, it's a Xerox. Right. Rhythm guitar is Freddie Green style. Now, my favorite guitar player in that style is actually this guy, Alan Roos, who played with Benny Goodman. And apparently, if you believe the kind of legends, when Count Basie came to town and Freddie Green came to town, he actually took lessons with Alan Roos. Oh, crazy. And kind of he helped him make his conception of how to play it. And then Freddie kind of took it and ran with it. But like, Freddie is this guy that just spent his entire life from 1937 to 1987 when he died. I think I have those dates right. That's the worst thing when you're on mic and you're like, you're like totally. Trying to pull those details. Totally. And I have said certain things that are like, oh, that's not quite exactly right, and I've regretted it. Although I did find it funny when somebody was like, this isn't the first time in 80 years that this particular song has been played. And I was like, well, it was played by a 10-piece band instead of the full original orchestration, so technically it wasn't the... I mean, I didn't nerd it, but like, that's not what I meant. It wasn't like, this is the only time anyone's played Ram Bebop Boom Bam. Like, clearly hundreds of people have played it, but like, this exact takedown or whatever. Anyway,
funny.
But like you have to be careful about exactly what you say on mic, and that's a challenge. But Freddie Green literally played a billion quarter notes, just chunk and just what a beautiful thing that he just had this singular mission, kind of like in Japanese culture. There's like kind of the thing of like you do a particular task and that's the thing you devote yourself to doing it the best, and so like you want to perfect that form. Like Freddie Green is like. That's that. Anyway, these just seem like really great things to name my son because they were cool role models. But so Charlie Frederick Stout was born in September, and he was born 2 weeks early. And basically, my wife had this condition that we didn't know about at the time that almost killed her basically a week later. Called postpartum cardiomyopathy or peripartum cardiomyopathy if you're still pregnant. And it's basically like you go into heart failure. And people used to die in childbirth regularly. that was one of the things. And, you kind of swell up like Veruca Salt. And nobody caught it.
Wow.
But basically, the Friday night of Camp Hollywood, Dean Morrow was playing, and so Rachel goes into labor. Albert leads the band. It's a great weekend. Everything went fine. But Charlie was born, and likely owing to my wife's condition, he was born 2 weeks early, which is not that early, but he was born like kind of a little underweight. And again, like we're not talking about like a preemie, but like enough that it was weird. And I just remember that moment of like him coming out and the nurses kind of like doing stuff with him. And I just got that immediate tinge of something's not right.
Yeah.
Something's not 100% on board. And this is as I'm like literally crying the most sincere, beautiful, joyous tears of my life. And if I ever need to cry on camera, just think Charlie being born, done. Okay. But and so they take him to they take him out of the room, just kind of check on him, do some things. And so he ends up having to spend like the first 3 days of his life, not with us in the birthing suite, but in the NICU, which we're very lucky that the hospital we went to had one of the best NICUs in the area, if not the country. And it's super traumatic and scary. And, you worry. Every parent worries, but this is like an official, this is a thing you should be worried about.
Yeah.
This isn't just like your own subjective worries. This is like, by the way,
there's a thing that can happen. Yeah.
And the weird thing is like, they basically kick mom out after 2 days by state law, but Charlie wasn't ready to go home. And that was super traumatic to have to go home without him and to go visit him. And it was only one more day.
Right.
It wasn't that bad. But I had all of this Chick Webb stuff that I'd picked for the set list on my phone, on a playlist on my, I was going to say iPod, but it was a phone by that point. And so we just listened to Clap Hands, Here Comes Charlie on repeat when we went to the hospital to pick him up. And so for us, it was like this celebration that here we go. We get to take Charlie and pick him up and take him home. And that he was going to be okay.
Yeah.
And, I told that story twice. And, the following year I was like, well, I can't just tell that story like by itself. Like, again, like I'm just direct. Like I said, there's a fine line between writing an arrangement that sets people up to have the specific, sincere, emotional reaction that you want, and even the musicians playing it, versus like literally manipulating them into that, because that's like creepy. And so like if I'm talking on the mic and telling this story, like it's got to be like 100% from the heart, and it can't just be me rehashing this thing. But because there's sort of like a second part to that. And you mentioned the young Ella stuff. My wife, that's her favorite, Rachel's favorite thing is that young Ella period of her with Chick Webb, and then immediately after Chick Webb died, where she took over the band. And one of the things we didn't realize until the very last year we did Lindy Focus before the shutdown was that honestly, like almost a third, if not half of the material is actually Ella Fitzgerald and her famous orchestra. So it's not Chick Webb night, it's Chick and Ella night. And it's going to be that way in the future.
Awesome.
Because to honor the fact that she took it over and kept it going, and obviously her contribution is immeasurable as well. But basically, like, we bring Charlie home, and then like 4 days later, my wife is like, I can't breathe. I'm going to go to the hospital. I must be having like an allergic thing. And she thought she'd get a inhaler. Thank you. My space work was not working for the podcast listeners. But like basically like, she almost died right there. And they managed to like get some fluid out of her and get her going. But when your body just fills up with fluid, it makes your heart struggle, and it can cause heart failure. And she technically had heart failure in there. They bring in the guy to talk to her about a heart transplant.
Oh my God.
you're like, oh my God, like this is so real. And, so it was like right away back into peril, out of the frying pan, right back into it. And I know that, she managed to like go through that, get stabilized from like 5 or 10% heart, whatever the number is, back up to like a normal range eventually after a couple of years. But she made it through, and one of the things that was on her phone, because it was my iTunes that was on her phone, was all this Chicken Ella stuff. And so Little White Lies is a song that she always thinks of. And I mean, like, obviously thematically, the telling of Little White Lies in a romantic context is not the message that we're talking about here. But like, that was just one of the songs that she had on her playlist. And so, like, you know, it's not, the most important thing is how this music, the stories of the people that made this music and that made our dance. But we also have this other layer of how it is in our community and telling the stories of the people that matter to us. And like, I mean, I'm going to, for anybody that doesn't Lindy Hop of a certain age, like, I don't know if you can really understand what it was like to see Andrew Thigpen and Karen Turman do their version of the history of dance by that one viral video guy with the orange shirt. Them doing that, but with the history of Lindy Hop routines, both in the history of Lindy Hop in the original era, but also then going through the routines of like the Minis Moochers and Ben and Sherry's team and all of that stuff, and Kim and Dave's routine, and like how, and probably Sky Ramona probably in one of the but like, that's our story, and that's our story of all of us together. So like, the context of the history is I think the most important thing, but there's also this history that we all have together, and this postmodern scene where we expect every single song to be like great social dance Lindy Hop tempo. No ballads, no Latin numbers, no weird stuff, just like get to the right thing, you know.
Cherry picked.
And but like, again, when it comes to the contest music or the ways that kind of expectation can become inhumane, it's like, okay, push back against that. But the fact of the matter is, like, what if we can change what we're doing in a way that's not untrue to the spirit of the jazz music we're playing? We're not changing the jazz music we're playing so that it feels wrong. But what if we can make a contest song that is better than if you just played 2 random recordings for these people? And so, like, the creation of contest-specific music is its own kind of thing. And it can be reductive and over-representative and under-representative in its own ways. And yes, it's formulaic that when there's a jam contest, that there's an 8-bar drum break and then everybody does swing out. But the fact of the matter is that I believe, and I mean, it's possible that somebody else did this before me and I don't remember it or didn't realize it. But to me, I remember Camp Hollywood 2002. I remember the Balboa contest, and I remember the couples that won.
I remember the Dean Collins, Dean Mora. I was in that contest.
And the couples that won got the shout chorus, and the couples that I thought probably danced just as well got just a piano or a bass solo. And so their level of rhythmic intensity and stuff was like kind of on the floor, and then the other people get da 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 da, and I just thought that would just seem so manifestly unfair to me. And then the idea that whoever the last couple is has to go straight from their spotlight into the all skate while everyone's been resting. That just seemed like so unfair to me.
Exactly.
So like, if the least I could do was put in an 8-bar drum break, and everybody does a line of swing outs. You know, it's formulaic.
Swing the blues.
Awesome.
It's so funny because, like, legit, like, you talking about the contest music, I'm like, oh shit, that is our modern scene. It wasn't like that before, and it's so like storytelling, because I didn't know any musical tones, and so like our emails, like, I need this, and I'm like saying it, and I think the way, and you're like, cool, I don't want this and this, but cool, okay, great. And then we're doing it, and I'm like, "Oh shit! Did we just do that all together? Like, that's incredible."
Yeah.
That's definitely but it is all added to the whole legend of it all.
But it is also super important that Amy Johnson and Ultimate Lindy Hop Showdown get credit for really making the jam format a thing. And so I want to make sure that that's super clear, because
absolutely, that's
that was really important.
A lot of people don't understand nowadays. We're going to move on to the last little part right here, the main interview.
What are you talking about? We're only like 4.5 hours
totally, absolutely.
I told you, we'll talk as long as you want.
Exactly. We're going to regret that. So right now we want to talk about one of the main things we wanted to have you on, because I'm super excited. I listened to the album the other day, and it's the Close Shave.
Yes.
Damn, God, good.
You got it. Good job.
Okay, well, no, but just to explain this joke, because look at this. I have 8 bands. Now, bear in mind, only 2 of them go all to the national events. Generally, the Campus 5, which is our main band, and then the Jonathan Stout Orchestra. But many different Lindy Hop events, some of which you were working at and were my contact at, needed other bands, and they weren't big enough or couldn't afford the big band. And so when Dean Mora famously kind of disbanded Mora's Modern Rhythmists, and Dean Mora is someone that I looked up to as a mentor, I wanted to just be the version of Dean Mora that instead of stopping at 1937 started at 1937. And so Dean was the template upon which I wanted to do my thing, just kind of moved over slightly. But he was going to disband the Rhythmists, and so for Camp Hollywood, the idea of having a kind of 20s 30s band for the Shag Balboa night.
Right.
That's not a thing we really do anymore. And by we, I mean Hillary, because Camp Hollywood is her event, not mine.
That's what it says.
It does say by me, I mean me. Yeah. It really is just Hillary and then the people that volunteer that weekend. And she is such a badass. She's just a really amazing human being. But the idea that we needed something to fill that void was why I created the band The Rhythm Busters. And that band has no longer really ceased to be a thing. It doesn't need to keep existing because now most events are like, well, we can have a 10-piece band or we can just have another night of the orchestra. And now that Lindy Focus has sort of happened and you have 300 plus tunes in your book, you can do 2 very discrete nights of music easily, since we're used to doing 5 at Lindy Focus. But then Cowbell was like, well, we need another small band because we can't really warrant spending the money on a bigger band. So
that was me too.
That's okay. That's okay.
It's your fault.
I mean, and the constraints are not a judgment. These are constraints because so many events, it's one person putting, it's Hillary putting their or it's a committee of people.
Yeah. But that's the funny thing is another point of interest is usually those bigger events. I'm I am a part of it. It's a weird fucking thing.
Yeah. But I just want to point out, ain't nobody getting rich in Lindy Hop. This is for the love, and people are trying to make a living at best.
Yeah.
And we should respect that and not pretend every event doesn't have to make money. But so we started. They basically said, well, we need another small group that isn't just the Campus 5 again, even though we have 100 tunes in our book. Anyway, but I was like, okay, well, I've always wanted to do a band with clarinet and vibraphone, and so we started the Grand Slam Sextet, which is literally a bunch of the Benny Goodman Sextet tunes we had been playing in the Campus 5, but it pulled out, and then doing all of that material, and then the stuff with Hampton where it's the Benny Goodman Quartet.
I love the vibes.
Oh,
yeah. Trust me, everybody loves vibes, and especially when I do other things, people are like, yeah, that's great, but where are the vibes? Yeah, it's not everything has vibes, people.
Yeah.
But so we started that, and then the following year it was well, we need another small group, and no, we can't afford the big band. I was like, okay, fine. Well, I could put together a Django band, so we have a Django band called the Boulevardier, which, again, was me trying to take that sound and make it as danceable and specifically tailored to a Balboa crowd versus necessarily a Lindy Hop crowd, and the kind of distinct tempo expectations that people have in those 2 different worlds. And then, the growing the big band to where I have 300 tunes, that was Lindy Focus. We need you to do, and originally it was well, we want to do 5 nights of big band, and we used to Voltron a bunch of small groups together and Power Ranger them together into a massive thing. I pulled a younger reference for you.
I got it. I watched Power Rangers.
So many more pop cultures than I expected.
I was a teen in the 90s. I get it.
You were a significant.
We're like this, and then do you get it?
Oh, please! You were in the youth division of the U.S. Open in 1998.
I would have been younger than me.
The good old days.
Old man Stout over here. Back in the 90s, which was 20 years, which was 30 years ago, much like the 60s would have been in the Wonder Years when it aired. If it makes you feel old.
That's what we feel like. We're the friends.
No, but Lindy Focus was well, we want to do all big band. How can we possibly do that? And I believe Gamble had the idea of well, what if we did each night a different band leader? Right. And then he and I kind of hashed out, well, what charts could we even get? Like I said, it's 33 songs, so call it 30. Can I get 30 Chick Webb songs in 2013? No, you cannot find big band arrangements that exist in the world already unless you did them yourself. And don't tell anyone. Because I'm not going to pretend that somebody didn't do them somewhere. I mean, that's certainly possible, but those were not available for purchase even on the gray market back then. And so, but it was, again, it's all about problem solving. All of those contest things, it's problem solving. It's like, okay, we're doing this showcase thing, this tournament thing where each couple's going to go in for a chorus, and then we're going to stop and decide.
Oh yeah,
like, how do we make that work?
Who the hell would do that kind of contest? That's fucking weird. Oh wait.
No. And then finally, like, pushing through, like, doing ILHC, like, they would have the Campus 5 one night, but we needed to do, like, one of these long jam contests, and that's a lot for, like, 2 horns, like Albert and Jim, or Albert and one other trumpet. That's a lot of blowing. So I was like, well, can we do the Campus 5 plus 2? Can I just add 2 more people? Like, Paul Cosentino's already here. Come on, he's awesome. We'll do them. We'll bring him on, and we'll, and then, like, that band was originally just literally, like, I would write extra parts, and every song was like 30 seconds longer because I wanted to give them something to do. But then seeing how, like, Michael Gamble's 8-piece Rhythm Serenaders really, like, took advantage of that form intentionally, and, like, Josh Colazzo's Candy Jacket Jazz Band really, like, took advantage of. Then that band, I decided to actually, like, invest in that band. It's called the Rug Cutters now. Right. But again, like, that band only gets hired at ILHC, and at this point, I think it's probably just going to be the big band forever. Because why would you not? But now that band's got its own thing, and then like, lastly at Cowbell, like, again, like, it's all about problem solving. I have a very strong lack of imagination. Like, people are like, how can you do a gig during the pandemic? Like, dude, I don't know. And when it came to, like, the remote recording thing. Yeah. I just said, I don't know how to do that. I just can't. Yeah. I don't. Right. I mean, I participated in them, but I don't know how to run them. Totally. Yeah. I didn't even know how to ask people. And even now, like, we're getting to the point where we might be able to have, like, in-person gigs again and stuff. Yeah. And I have no imagination for how to make that happen. So I'm grateful when somebody lands one of those constraints, as annoying as they are, maybe in that moment of like, I need to do what?
What's Zoom?
But what's Zoom? But like, going back to, like, the pre-pandemic things of, like, we know we really need 6 or 7 discrete spotlight songs for this Balboa contest, and each one of them's got to be 230 beats per minute. Originally, it was like, we need this to be 6 killer dillers that are recognizable. That was Laura Keats' original idea. And I was like, that's inhumane. That's absolutely impossible, and you're going to ruin the rest of the night for everyone else. Because as much as the contest is an important focal point of the night, like, everyone there still needs to dance the rest of the night. But when I leaned into the idea, instead of like I found a way to make that work, again, overcoming my entire lack of imagination of, literally the Campus 5 is not what I imagined it to be. It's the reaction to all those things that weren't the things we wanted. And so this is like if those are the negative things, this is the positive impression of the mold that we ended up with. Yeah. But like with the Cowbell contest music, where now I wrote 6 completely original, brand new, never heard before arrangements for the competitors.
Amazing. Yeah.
Like, that's leaning into the problem in a way that, like, I'm grateful for now in retrospect, even if it, like, the first one was like, I gotta spend how many hours? and I mean, I will give, like, super big respect to Cowbell. I think, one of the things we all struggle with artists is getting paid for our effort, because we all know that nobody's getting rich in Lindy Hop, and it's really hard to ask for what you're worth sometimes, and we are constantly undercutting ourselves and not thinking we're worth enough. But, I did it, and it was like 20 or 30 or 40 hours worth of work to do that first year. And when I kind of let them know, they're like, okay, here's a check for that.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah.
And so, like, that kind of thing of being like, all right, well, if we're going to ask you to do a new thing, but we'll pay for it. Like,
yeah, exactly.
Exactly. But again, like, I'm grateful for that thing, because I had to write 6 original songs from scratch.
So what was the beginning phase of the Close Shave Quartet?
That was literally a nightclub in Hollywood that somebody had started a dance at, and was like, we can only afford 4 people.
Oh, okay.
Perfect.
And to be honest, like, I wish I'd thought of it back when we were doing Strutter's Ball, and on the regular, because
on the
every Wednesday, yeah.
But I had one of the things that I discovered doing Strutter's Ball, the way Shesha pitched it to me was, I'll give you enough money for like 4 people, and I'll just give you that every week. And if you don't use all of it one week, we'll just roll it forward to the next week. So if you can like save, then you can splurge.
Then do a bigger band, yeah.
Yeah, and so I had, for almost a whole year, a weekly gig there, and that was a great incubator of like what works, what doesn't. And one of the things that I discovered is that to make a really great night of social dancing music, you need a lot of colors and sounds and dynamics.
Yeah.
And the minute you drop drums out of the picture, you rob a bunch of the top dynamics and the bottom dynamics, because the band can be playing real quiet. And if the drums are playing sort of normal, it sounds soft. But if the band plays exactly that same level of quiet, but the drums play extra soft, you really feel it. Right. So it's like, another comic book reference for Nikki. I know you're, and I'm not like a giant comic book nerd per se either. Like, I mean, I can't.
Yeah.
Okay. But like the way that the penciler, who's the main artist, draws it, but then there's a way that the inker comes in and shades it that then adds extra texture. That's what a drummer does. Yeah. And a drummer can kind of magnify louder or softer what the band is doing. Because what I found when I tried a band without drums, it could only get so loud and it could only get so soft, and that kind of like squashed range was kind of monotone after a while. And then like how few soloists you have really impinges upon how many flavors you have. And say if you've got a trio, you've got with bass and drums and one horn. Well, now you have no chords. Okay, let's not even do a trio, because that's so limited. I mean, like obviously if you're Nat Cole or Oscar Peterson, maybe you can pull it off. I am neither. With a quartet, okay, bass and drums, some kind of chordal instrument, whether it's piano or guitar, and then some horn. Okay, so basically the top level thing is the horn player playing with everybody playing loud.
Right.
If you can have the piano player playing a solo, or that. And then really the only other sound you have is a bass and a drum solo. And those are obviously not the most common things you use a lot. Yeah, so you basically got 1, which is the piano.
Yeah.
You've got 2, which is the horn, or you've got kind of 0. And like there's only a certain number of sounds. So now if you have 2 horns, okay, well that doesn't give you 2 more. That's not, sorry. When you have 2 horns, it's not just one or the other or both. It's one or the other or both, or in different ways, and like with mutes and stuff. And so that like exponentially increases the number of options you have and the number of flavors, the number of sounds. And I remember like in 2001 maybe, I saw the documentary Scratch, which is about the history of turntablism. Okay. It's excellent. I recommend checking it out. And one of the things they talk about is a dichotomy in turntable DJs between people that are technically scratch proficient, like that crazy stuff, versus people that know how to rock a party and dig their crates and just play the perfect record at the perfect time. Yeah. Right. And so you can have all this technical virtuosity, but if you don't know how to rock a party, what good are you?
Exactly.
And in the same way that like a DJ kind of builds it up, breaks it down, kind of takes you on a journey, every song has its own journey. And if you've only got 2 places to go, on or off, it's either kind of middle, up, down, and then back. There's no shading in between. It like that limited palette of textures is so hard. But despite like all of that stuff, I really steadfastly was like, no, I literally can't do anything smaller than 5, and especially if we're doing like the Campus 5, I'd be the first person I'd fire. Rhythm guitar. Yeah. Because if it's just rhythm guitar, then you get kind of too much of like a Django thing. But somebody said, hey, can you do a quartet for this thing? And I was like, well, I really want to work. And for whatever reason, the idea to do vibraphone and guitar came up. And what's cool about both of those is, unlike a saxophone, a vibraphone can play chords. And same thing with a guitar, can play chords. Yeah. So it can kind of play rhythm while the other person's playing. And then you can both kind of play lead things, and you can play harmonies, and you can play like the kind of like what I was talking about, that communal improvisation where one person's playing the melody and the other plays kind of above it. Right. And it sort of worked. But actually, no, before that, sorry, that's really important. Before that happened, I had, no. I know, I'm remembering, because it's called the Close Shave Quartet.
Yeah.
and there's a barber pole on the album cover.
Right.
Because my barber, Sweeney Todd, at Sweeney Todd's in Los Feliz on Hollywood Boulevard, had asked us to play the Christmas party, and I played it like a couple years in a row.
Oh, yeah. I remember this story.
Yeah, and so we put together the band with Vibes for his Christmas party, and that's where it got the name the Close Shave Quartet.
Yeah.
And then... But that was like a Christmas party, so we were mostly just playing Christmas tunes and a little bit of jamming. And then the next step was playing at that Mexican restaurant on Sunset Boulevard. Suzanne was running the thing. I can't remember it.
Yeah,
anyway,
which one?
But like there were a couple gigs.
Nice. Yeah.
There were only probably like 4. That band's probably only had 4 or 5 gigs.
Yeah.
And
so it's played like 4 or 5 times.
4 or 5 times. 4 or 5 times. That's my Jim Ziegler impression.
Hey, got one in there.
I have actually had to do that once.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Oh, my God.
Yeah, we had to play that and he wasn't there.
That's a story for
nice.
your 4th podcast. Let's be
Yes.
honest.
Yeah.
Or the
Okay, so we... But now, coming out of the pandemic, it's been this whole year of not performing live gigs, but somehow, through all this, you've managed to record new music.
Yeah. Well, and the fact that there's a Close Shave Quartet CD is actually kind of this funny fluke because there's a Campus 5 CD that's going to come out like the following month.
Yeah.
Like we're still in post-production on it. Like it's still being mixed.
You're like the Keanu Reeves of jazz and modern music, modern swing music.
just putting out.
Yeah,
one
just
thing
putting out. Yeah. One thing.
No. So many people are so much more prodigious than I am. No, but what happened was it was middle of summer. Things were starting to open up a little bit.
Right. Yeah. One of
And
those times.
testing was available. And we had some science that could tell us wearing a mask matters, distancing matters. These are things that matter. You know, because at first we didn't know.
Yep,
we were all
exactly.
washing our hands like that was going to somehow stop a respiratory disease. Like Jesus. But it became kind of like I was like, wait a second. There's a way for us to get together under appropriate conditions that would not be irresponsible. And so we planned it, and it ended up being like, by the time we booked it, it was like November, which is when stuff started
It
closing
got
down
real
again.
bad again, yeah.
and I mean, frankly, if we didn't have it booked, I don't think the last session we
Right.
should have done. But the thing is, we all got tested some
Nice.
reasonable interval before. And again, that's not a bulletproof thing.
Right.
Yeah.
And, you know, everybody but the horn players wore a mask. Hillary was off in a vocal booth. And everybody otherwise stayed masked the whole time. And we ended up picking a studio that was huge instead of like a place that just fits the 6 of us, the 7 of us. By the way, don't name your band a number if it's not the full number of all the people in it. Because people are like, wait a second, it's not 5 people.
Yeah.
No, it's me and my 5 and Hillary. So that's 7. I can't tell you how many times in an email I typed.
Totally.
I know the math doesn't work. Parentheses JS plus C5 plus HA equals 7. But basically, like, we did it. We did it, and it was at Western Recorders, the name of which is now escaping me. But it was a studio that basically, like, Frank Sinatra
Right.
put together.
Yeah.
And he had this acoustic engineer come out and do the room. It had been a supermarket in the 30s, and
crazy.
it's actually 2 doors down from another super famous studio. So now it's called East West, and 2 doors down is another super famous United. Oh God, I'm blanking on the names. But like, here's the thing: there's 3 studios. There's Studio A, Studio B, and Studio C. So a bunch of Pet Sounds and the Beach Boys was recorded in Studio B. I mean, like any Thriller, like any number of famous records. The Rolling Stones, the Red Hot Chili Peppers, like the big room, which is what we used. And there's only 6 of us, and this is a room that fits a symphony orchestra. Like the Godfather theme, the theme from MASH. What's Going On by Marvin Gaye, New York, New York by Frank Sinatra,
Awesome.
Streisand, like you know,
Yeah.
it's insane.
That's crazy. Yeah.
Now the studio next 2 doors down, that was also something that Frank Sinatra did a bunch of stuff at. This is the place that he actually commissioned after that, which is sort of funny. But The other studio has a spot on the floor, which is where Frank. It's like in the ground. This is where Frank sang. And they have the podium on which he would, and at this one they have the podium too. He would sit at like this podium where theoretically the conductor would go, but he would sit there in front of the band, and the mic would be right in front of him, and then there's the whole band in front of him.
Oh, nice.
That's cool.
It's a super famous place, but it was huge.
Yeah.
And frankly, like, it's probably too much reverb on this record because it's such a huge space. But having that much space allowed Josh to really like
go for it.
Yeah.
Oh, awesome.
Like, it's feral.
Awesome.
Like, there's some,
yeah.
And there's a break he does. I think it's on I Would Do Anything for You. This last break, it's got this Chick Webb thing in it. I'm like, that's that the work you did getting
all
the Chick
that
Webb
influence.
stuff,
Yeah.
kind of being.
It gave me chills.
Yeah, but basically we did 2 days of sessions there, like 2 weekends apart, and the plan was to go back there for CalBal, which is California Balboa Classic, which was going to be live streaming in January, and Martin Luther King weekend, and so we were going to do Campus 5 plus the Grand Slam Grand Slam Sextet. So add a clarinet player and add a vibraphone player, and do a bit of both bands live from that studio. And that way I would get a second chance to record some of the new songs that I'd written
awesome.
during the pandemic.
Yeah.
So one of the important parts of like our bands is we're always playing for dancers and we're playing live all the time.
Right.
I mean, to be honest, not as often as I would like, even in the best of times, because LA is only so big, and like the Lindy Hop crowd is only so big, and so there's only so many places to play in LA in 1 month. So I mean, I wish we played all the time, but whenever I would get a new tune, I would play it for dancers and see what happens. And I can't tell you how many things evolved over time, seeing the response and adjusting to it. And so that R&D was like, nope. You're getting first draft. Since we did a second day, actually 2 of the songs did get a second, but it was really more like version 1.1 than version 2.0. I mean, it's not a lot of significant differences. But I was like super excited because I'd written 4 new songs during the pandemic. This was going to be the first time we're going to play them, and then this will be the first time we get to share them for dancers on this broadcast live from this famous studio. Wow! And if they were better than the studio takes, I could put them on the record. But that was January. And by January 1, it was like, there's no way we're getting 9 people in a room plus camera people, even with testing. This is not good. It's not a good look. It's not responsible modeling behavior for the global community. And so Jason Swihart, who's really helping to run CalBal right now and the Pacific Swing Dance Foundation, he had to give me the we're not doing it. Sorry. And totally. And Shane is the musical director, and so between the 2 of them, I don't know why, but I think Jason was like, well, is there anything we can do? But everybody needs to be masked.
Yeah.
And then it was like, well, I do have that band with the guitar and the vibraphone and bass and drums. There's no vocalist. I did sing a song on it, which that did not make the CD. And I'd like to pretend it was the mask that was the reason why. Oh, it didn't sound good through the mask. But we basically, I was like, well, I have this band that has no woodwinds in it, no brass in it. So I guess we could all be masked. And it's like, okay, well, what if we did it outdoors? What if because live streaming it from outdoors, that's just going to be problematic. What if we pre-record it like the day before, which is what we did. Yeah. But it's basically going to be live. We only got one take at everything. I think we did one extra take of one song. Didn't make it on the album either. But then it was like, okay, and they offered their balcony, their deck in Altadena, California, just up the hill from our house.
Nice.
And
awesome.
So I was like, okay, we'll do the Close Shave Quartet. Or the Close Shave Quartet. I have so many bands I mix up. I know. It's embarrassing. Well, and the worst is everyone's just like, oh, Jonathan's playing. Yeah, be specific.
Yeah, which because
that used to happen. That used to happen with a band leader back in 99, 2000, whose name I will leave out because he's a sex offender and was a horrible human being. But you'd see his name somewhere and you'd be like, oh, well, that's a good swing band. And then it was 6 people and you're like, that's not what I was expecting.
Oh, yeah.
And that problem happens to me too, at a certain point, I started, because people couldn't tell the difference, I started deliberately playing certain guitars in certain bands. So I got a metal resonator guitar like John Reynolds, my hero. And that was the Rhythm Busters guitar. So I only played that in the Rhythm Busters. And I used to do like Minor Swing and Dark Eyes like on every Campus 5 gig.
Yeah.
But then we had the Boulevard EA. So like that Django guitar is only going to be for that.
Yep.
Oh, got it.
You know, and it's sort of like I was trying to like differentiate them to no avail.
Yeah.
I can't even get the names right.
Honestly, like it just hit me that you did that.
Yeah.
Like, oh, yeah. That makes sense.
Yeah.
I thought
it was a jacket change.
I mean, white. Oh, you kidding? White tuxedo jacket for me in the Boulevard EA for sure.
Exactly.
Visual markers are super important. But basically, like that band only had like a couple random arrangements. We did the Marshall Watson's thing in Hollywood.
Yeah.
We did that once.
Right.
And I'd written a couple tunes for that, like arrangements for that.
Nice.
So I basically looked at my book and I was like, I've got a week.
As the Close Shave, right?
Yeah, as Close Shave, I've got a week,
Yeah.
and there's no material here. Like we can just jam on stuff. But as I've been talking this whole time about how arrangements are an arc, and there's this story, like my whole thing is like, I mean, jamming is fine, but like unless you know what you're doing and you're really paying attention the whole time, jamming can just be a little bit like, onanistic is a word that I've used before. You can look that up for your biblical scholars.
Oh, no.
But yeah, it's a little self-pleasing, shall we say.
Yeah.
And so like, I didn't want to do that. And so basically like 3 or 4 days before, I had a mad rush. I wrote like 10 arrangements for that band, which almost all of which is what, you hear.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so I was so excited to like share these songs that I'd written. So like that are on the new Campus 5 CD that it will eventually be out. I rearranged them for the Close Shave Quartet.
Oh, nice.
And so I'd written a song early in the pandemic for the Mobtown Ballroom because they were doing a big fundraiser thing for their employees. And so I just came up with a little riff tune. I recorded a little guitar version and sent it to them. But I was like, this riff tune's good enough to be a Campus 5 song. Let's make it a thing.
Awesome.
And so we did a Close Shave version. My friend Paul Riding, who does the Global Swing broadcast and is on Twitch, he had mentioned sort of like maybe we could do like a sponsorship thing. Like, could he commission a song? And the funny thing is I never ended up like trying to get money out of him because I was like, well, I got a good song out of it, so I'm sort of fine with it. But it's called Riding with Paul. It's pretty on the nose. Pretty on the nose.
I saw it and I was like, huh.
Yeah. Well, so it's funny. Song references to me, song titles of an instrumental song are so hard because they have to be just right. And you want there to be a reference that someone can catch, but not a superficial one.
Yeah.
I'm not going to call it Frankie's Shim Sham song.
Sure,
It's got to be like one level.
Hey, we're still waiting for that infamous song that you promised me like way back in the day.
I don't remember this at all.
The Last Jitterbug.
Oh yeah, it'll be. So have you ever heard Moby's song 1000?
No.
It's a house song that speeds up to 1,000 beats per minute.
Oh no.
So eventually it's just it'll be that.
Yeah, yeah, pretty much.
Yeah, perfect.
I said that. For anybody who doesn't know, The Last Jitterbug is about Jeremy Off.
Yep.
Exactly.
Jeremy Off is
Awesome.
perhaps the most authentic person.
Yeah.
I mean, he is 100% him. He is 100% his vision of dance, and he's been somebody I've looked up to since I've known he existed in 1999.
Yeah.
The Move Burglar.
He was the move burglar, but try and burgle his moves because he doesn't remember what he just
exactly.
did.
Yeah.
Dude,
right.
show me that.
Exactly.
What do I do?
What is it?
Exactly.
I
You
don't
know,
know.
he's just like channeling.
That's
Yeah.
that's how far we go. We know this person before anybody else knew him in the sense that like actually he's been the same too.
No, and he really is the last year because he's the realest of real deals when it comes to that stuff.
Totally.
So this new album is coming out. It's already out now, rather.
No.
The Close Shave one?
No. Well, can you excuse me?
Yeah,
can I run off
I
camera?
think you had it in your hand earlier.
I did, and now I don't know.
We'll just hold off and I'll grab a drink.
Yeah.
Put this out.
Ta-da.
And now by the magic of
this new
video
album.
editing. So this is a CD that you guys get to have.
CD.
This is, I know. Well, oh Lord. Well, there are only 100 of these.
Okay,
oh, nice.
And I've got to give like
limited
10
edition
to the band and the people that recorded it and the art guy. So you guys get one of the very few. Ooh. So this is the Close Shave Quartet live from the Balboa Classic EP. It's going to be 7 songs digitally. If you manage to snag one of these 100 copies, you get a bonus 8th song. But we've got me and Craig Fundiga on the vibraphone, Seth Ford Young on bass, and Josh Colazzo on drums. So you've got the rhythm section from Edward Sharp and the Magnetic Zeros on here, which is pretty cool.
Awesome.
But yeah, so our friend Chris Wilkinson did this just amazing cover in the style of David Stone Martin, who did a lot of Verve art in the late 40s. And he's also a really great vintage guitar player. So that's my electric guitar and my electric guitar amp. And
nice.
He's got the barber pole.
Yeah.
When you sent it over to me, the artwork, and I was just like, oh my god, that was so perfect.
So perfect.
That's what I envisioned already before you had said like what that was, but just by the name only.
Yeah.
You know?
So, and this has got 3 of those 5 original songs on it. And what's weird is like, you have this version, and then if you buy the Campus 5 record, you got a totally different version. And in the swing era, a song would be a hit.
Yeah.
And every band would want to then play a version of that song. And so it's kind of cool to like come at it from different ways. And I want to tease this, but another friend of mine whose remote recordings I have been on is doing a remote recording, and we're planning to do 2 of these songs on his remote recording. And he's going to like change the tempo or change the arrangement in a way to reinterpret it, and I'm really excited for that.
That's awesome.
But I'm going to give you guys this.
Thank you
so much.
We're going to display it.
I literally turned down my in-laws. I was like, well, I don't have any extra copy. Like literally, I have to sell these.
I hope they don't listen to this podcast.
First song up there.
Oh no, I mean my mom's getting one. But
okay.
But my
just
uncle,
not the in-laws.
my uncle, the trombone player, who like got me a lesson with John Reynolds, which was like one of my Monkey Meet the Monolith moments of my life. He's not getting one.
Another very authentic person.
He's getting a CDR of it.
What I'd love to happen now is that if you could play a song for us. Will it be from this or will it be
will.
Perfect.
It will.
Awesome.
Perfect.
I love it.
Perfect. So, ladies and gentlemen, if you listen to the podcast, if you made it this far, you get this treat of a live version of...
Look at the back. You just said treat. What song is it?
Trick or Treat.
Yeah, there you go.
Awesome.
Oh, nice.
people actually responding. I'm like, yes, it's working.
Likewise,
yeah. Awesome. Thank you so much for playing that song.
It's amazing.
My sincere pleasure. So one of the reasons that I picked that song is the kind of solo guitar version that I just played. That's how I wrote that song.
Oh, that's so awesome.
And I had written it to be sort of like a chord melody solo guitar thing. And, we were talking about like the pandemic and all of this stuff. And like, I actually managed to get a whole bunch of stuff done, which I'm really kind of amazed by. Like, I've been on 3 or 4 different remote releases by other people. I put out a solo guitar EP. I kind of forget that I did that.
Yeah.
And then we have this Campus 5 CD coming out, and then the Close Shave EP as well. But when I was writing that song, it was intended to be, I was going to do another volume, another EP of solo guitar stuff. But I was going to try and do duets, and there's a history in the 1930s of swing guitar duets of people like Carl Kress and Dick McDonough and Eddie Lang and Carl Kress and basically a bunch of people in Carl Kress, but and others, I should say. But I couldn't think of how to play the second part. I don't know how to be the support role. Because I'm still trying to learn this very, very distinct but super gone the way of the dodo style of playing 1930s chord melody guitar. It's like it's not a thing really that people do anymore. And so, but I didn't know how to do that second role because it's kind of in the background, and I didn't know how to compartmentalize. So I never did that project. I was going to do a thing of EPs. Now for Sarah Spoon's podcast, one of the songs I put on that EP, Front Porch Swing, it worked great, but it was like a little too slow. And then I said, okay, well, you know what? Why don't I kick it up a couple beats per minute? We'll do a little bit faster. How about it'll sound like this? And why don't I do like a 2-guitar version so it'll be like a little bit fuller? That was a sort of generation of that. But yeah, Trick or Treat started as just this little minor key thing on solo guitar, and I thought I would do a guitar version of it for that, and I didn't, and it basically kicked around all summer. And by October, I was like, this needs a title. Well, it's October. Yeah. Let's call it Trick or Treat. And I struggled so much, like I was saying, like with naming instrumental songs. It's like you want it to be like on the nose, but not too on the nose.
Yeah.
And but my goal is that this will somehow become automatically associated with Halloween, so that then it can just be a Halloween song, and then I can somehow profit from that. Even though, like I said, no one's getting rich in Lindy Hop.
Totally.
It's the dead man's party of the Lindy Hop world. But I want to play the rest of the year too.
So where can we get this? These
all right. So the Close Shave Quartet EP is going to be on Bandcamp, and that's going to be the only place you can get the physical CDs because we only burned 100 of them, and I have to give away 10 of them. So there's only 90, and so they're going to be at Bandcamp. They're going to drop midnight. So that's Thursday morning or Thursday night, technically, of May 7th, which is the final Bandcamp Friday. So that's the day Bandcamp foregoes their cut of everything and goes straight to the artist. So do that. PayPal still takes a cut, boo. But I'm grateful. But so that's 5/7 or 7/5 in the other parts of the world. And then we're still trying to get the Campus 5 record finished. Basically, Wally, our bass player, who's a fantastic recording engineer who recorded half of the stuff on the last Campus 5 record and has done hundreds of other great records. Oh, he recorded the Mighty Blue Kings' Meet Me in Uptown.
Oh, crazy.
Believe it or not.
Oh, man.
Yeah, I know, which for me was a formative record in 1999. That was like 97.
Same. I remember having that CD.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah, and so he was the engineer on that.
Wow.
Crazy, right? But and besides, playing bass with Big Sandy and then the Lucky Stars and Dave and all those people. But so Wally's mixing it, and it's kind of a whole new process because he's usually the one recording it. And so we recorded at this famous studio. Now he's taking the tracks and having to like do them, but he hasn't already done the magic to them on the way in. So he's like having to have a whole new process, but it's sounding great. And our art guy, Chris Wilkinson, who just designed this for the viewers.
It's a beautiful cover.
Honestly, like I feel like he's done our last 4 projects, and I feel like his art is better than our project sometimes. And I'm just hoping that like it's not a disappointment.
It matches so well.
It's perfect.
It goes
together.
Like
it really
the
is.
feeling of it, the vibe of the cover, it does fit for sure. This is definitely, I mean, not downplaying anything else, but this is definitely my favorite cover that you put out.
That's the thing. I'm asking him like with no pause, like, hey, get back into it. And again, without like spilling anything, I'm pretty sure like he's got to do a cover for Hot Club of Cowtown in between. And like my visual references that I give him are like pretty much very specific 30s, 40s, but not 50s. Like it can't go into 50s. That's saying the wrong thing. And I'm asking him to like, all right, come up with another one.
Yeah.
You got another $1 million idea? Let's go for it. But so I'm hoping that like, I was aiming for the first Friday in June, and then I found out that Bandcamp Fridays is not going to be a thing in June. So there's no point to be worried about that date, but I'm hoping early June. And basically like it's in process of being mixing, and we're just waiting on the art.
That's the perfect time. I mean, like, that's the reason why we wanted you on, and thank you so much.
Yeah, Jonathan, you epitomize authenticity. I think if anything is clear in this podcast, it's that.
Well, can we for a second? That's exactly the thing that means so much to me, but authenticity is the problem. It's the asterisk, is the exclamation point, right? So when I was saying that being the real deal is the thing that Pete Holmes says, I don't even know what that is.
Yeah, exactly.
But like that's what I'm going for, because I've realized like if I'm going to do note for note things of like the other people, it's authentic, but is it really?
Right. But I think it's more than just trying to be authentic and finding that thing that you love. I think it's more in who you are. And I think you're such a real person, and that your passion and love for all of this shines through everything else. And that's what I mean when I speak of authenticity. And I think that surpasses your knowledge and expertise and things like that. I think it's who you are deeply as a human. And thank you so much for coming on.
I don't know how to take a compliment. Very much.
I'm forcing you to take the compliment.
Exactly.
No, but we love to wrap up the podcast with a couple questions that we kind of just throw your way.
But that means the world to me. Thank you so much. That's like exactly what I want. That's all I've ever wanted to be. So thank you.
Well, it's so clear to us, and it means a lot that you even wanted to be on our stupid little podcast.
Yeah, I know. It's so fun.
This is the most I've talked to people outside of my own household in a year and a half. Please, God, don't leave. I don't want to be done.
You're like, I got these records coming out. We're like, build our podcast. You're like, sweet, let's do it.
Yeah,
that's what it felt like.
I was like, hey, I've got these records. Oh, by the way, I know you put a podcast. I mean, if you didn't have anybody that could be on them, I would totally.
We're like, we're in. So we got these two questions that we like to throw at you. The first one is?
Yes. So what is the one thing that you hope sticks after COVID goes away?
That we don't take everything for granted as much as we usually do. For as much as like I'm so grateful that Lindy Focus has really led the way in making every event seem to really focus on music and people value the music more, there's still so many events where like, the music is really not as important, and it's not important to a lot of the people per se. I mean, I think when you go to Lindy Focus, everyone's swept up in it and finds themselves at some point standing next to the stage gawking in awe, which, given the work that those musicians are doing under my bare minimum of leadership in those moments, I'm in awe, and I'm sitting there having to play rhythm guitar. Yeah. But I really feel like, so much of what we have in the Lindy Hop world is so special, and to sort of be so quickly robbed of it, we really got to like appreciate how great it was and how great it is, and obviously how great we can continue to make it better. And I mean, obviously there are so many things about the status quo that somebody that looks like me is like comfortable returning to, that's still not good enough for a lot of people that don't look like me. And so I don't want to pay short shrift to that, but like, I think there's so much that we tend to take for granted about, like here in LA, like this is one of the biggest cities in the world, It's one of the most populous metropolitan areas in the world. It's like 18 million people. I looked that up. Don't worry. I didn't just have that on recall. I looked that up recently. But like,
trust you, so it's fine.
But there's so many things to do on a given night, and I can't tell you how many times somebody has been like, "Oh, you're playing there? Yeah, I'll come to the next thing." And I'm like, I get it. Like, we're not the center of your universe, and I don't expect you to be. But like, if you're not coming out now, then it doesn't matter whether you come out to the next one, because we need people to show up. And I feel like it's so easy to take the things we have for us for granted, and whether that's great venues to play, regular DJ dances, being able to be with our friends, being able to touch people, being able to visit family, being able to travel, whatever all those things, like we got all that taken away from us. And I mean, I'm still processing the grief. Like there's no question. Like I had a kind of a moment where I got really hopeful and optimistic, and then that kind of met with some like not yet. And then I just kind of lost all my hope, and I just had all this fresh grief over again of like, oh, this isn't over. Like, we're still in it. And again, I wasn't saying like we're gonna just go straight back to normal. Like, I believe in science, and I will trust the CDC, and I've been wanting to wear my mask this whole time and not been a jerk who's been like, I can't wait to take this thing off. But like, oh God, we've lost so much, and we've lost so many people. And we just need to stop taking things for granted, especially the things that are like always there and seem like they'll be there forever, because how many restaurants are you not going to be able to go back to because they're gone, you know?
Yeah, absolutely.
How many places do you love?
R.I.P. Soup Plantation.
No, it's so true. Like, I can't even, to be honest, I can't believe that Atomic is still standing. Like, it's still going to be a struggle, but we did it. Like, we made it through, and it's things like that. Like, I will never take things for granted like I did before. And I think the thing that gives me a lot of hope is that every time we ask somebody this question, it's a similar response. And that if we're all feeling that it's a powerful feeling for us as a general population to be feeling that gratitude for things that we had before that maybe we didn't appreciate as much as we should have. And it gives me a lot of hope going forward.
And we were talking about this before we jumped on here. And it's like, I feel like everybody's saying something very similar in general. And that leads to the next thing, which is the last question, which is, what is your life's philosophy?
I love that response.
I mean, like, my first response, I mean, I'm going to give you a real answer. Like, if nothing else, the fact that I desperately want to talk to you longer means I'm going to find something to say. But part of me just wants to say 42, drop the mic and walk off.
Yes.
She got that one.
There we go. There we go. I mean, in some way or another, I've always just been in this search for the real thing. Like, we're having this punch. And the reason that I know about punch is because my friend Don Lee introduced me to cocktails in 2004, I think. And Don Lee is one of my dearest friends and one of the best people on earth. Just a wonderful human being. He's also like a world famous bartender. But I knew him as just my friend that we went to 5th grade through high school with. And he introduced me to my first K-pop song. Not that I'm a big K-pop stan. I mean, I don't want to be, but like, I can totally rock Us circa 1996. And so when we played in Korea, they recognized that even in my phonetic rendering of Korean. They're like, I know that. Okay. Hey, girl, give it one more try.
We're already big.
Hey, Koreans, girl, ain't gonna lie. But like,
I love it so much.
You're welcome. You're welcome. But basically, like, my friend Dawn, like, I didn't drink really. I mean, like, I would have a gin and tonic, but like, I wasn't interested in cocktails. I don't really love wine. I mean, wine with food can be a really cool thing, but like, my last name is Stout, and I don't like beer like generally. You know, I've learned to appreciate a really crisp Pilsner on a hot day, or like with Korean food or Japanese food or something. But like, at the end of the day, like, I'm never like, oh, I really want to crack a beer. So like, alcohol wasn't that interesting. Yeah. And we were playing Midsummer Swing at Lincoln Center, which is, oh my God, so huge and amazing. And I'm so grateful we got to do it. But that was like early. It was like 2004, I think. And my friend Don was like, okay, well, come a day early and we'll hang out. And I remember I went to his house and he had more liquor than anything I've ever seen in my life. And he was just like a cocktail nerd who had gotten into it. And there was this kind of cocktail renaissance happening. And again, like the swing revival, quote unquote, like obviously there were still people that were like doing it. But by and large, most of the world did not know how to make like a cocktail where you like properly measured it and you like used fresh juice. And so like I came over to his house and he made me these two cocktails, an Aviation and then a Jack Rose. And the Jack Rose has to be made with Applejack, and that's an apple brandy that's made here in the United States by the Laird's Company. It's the only one it really is. That's been going back, like it's the oldest operating distillery in America, in New Jersey. But like you had to track this stuff down. Yeah. So not only did we go there, then we went to this place, Pegu Club, which is a place that closed during the pandemic, and that was run by I think it's Julie Rayner and Audrey Saunders. I know it's an Audrey Saunders thing. I think Julie was involved, but I'm blanking. But Audrey Saunders ran this program, and that was like one, along with a place called Milk and Honey, were the two great incubators of this whole cocktail renaissance that happened. And my friend Dawn was just a patron who literally got tapped one night to go behind the bar because the other bartenders wanted to go to a concert. I mean, I'm repeating a story he told me. But I went to visit him. He showed me this stuff, and then he took us to Pegu Club, and it was this omakase kind of like, well, what are you into? What can I make you? Like, not here's a menu, what do you want? Right. It was like, you know nothing, and I'm not telling you know nothing, but we all know you know nothing. I know a bunch. What can I, let's dialogue, let's figure this out. And almost every bar experience I've ever had as a cocktail nerd has been chasing the dragon of that amazing, mind-blowing thing of like, well, I guess I like 7 and 7. Ooh. Yeah.
That's the drinks you used to drink all the time.
You know, and but he was like, okay, well, that's with Canadian whiskey, and that's often has a lot of rye in it. So here's a Harvard Rye Fizz. And then, and then I come home from that trip. I don't know how to do this. There's no place in LA that I know of that you can get these things. I had to learn how to do it myself, and thankfully, my friend Don is not only like one of, the famous bartender, but he's also like he's like the Bill. No, he's not quite the Bill Nye, but like he's one of the people that really got into the scientific nitty gritty of why we do the things we do, why the good ways of doing it are better. Some of the things that are myths that we don't need to bother doing, and so. Like flash forward a couple years later, I found he introduces me to one bar, 7 Grand in LA, that was one of the ground zeros of the Renaissance here. And like, then I met those people and I grew all that. And then I've had to learn how to make this stuff myself. But like, he's walking around on one of those trips. He's got a pocket refractometer in his pocket. So he's got like a little thing, and he would ask for them to just give him like a jigger of simple syrup, and he would like take a straw and put a drop from the straw in his little thing. And he was testing the sugar strength of the sugar syrup, because he wanted to see what the average was in all of these different places. Wow. Because when you make sugar syrup, which is a super important ingredient in cocktails, how sweet is it? Right. Do you do 1 part sugar, 1 part water? Okay. Well, is that by volume or by weight? Because those are two very different things. And then if you do 2 parts to 1 part, so it's like a stronger syrup, right? How does that affect? Is that a 1-to-1? Is that a thing where now it's 50% sweeter, or is it only like volumetrically what? And his last project that he did, which had to close during the pandemic, was called Existing Conditions in New York City, in the West Village. And his partner on that was Dave Arnold, who is the other really great science guy in the thing. So it's like the perfect people to come together. But like, Don was this great kind of Sherpa through all of that. And as I would fanboy out at each stage, he was like a little bit further in that same process. I mean, I never went and was a professional behind the bar. He literally is, literally, there's an article on the internet, Don Lee, legendary bartender. I promise you look that up. And, he was always like 1 step or 2 steps ahead of us and me and some of my other friends from our circle of friends in high school. And he was always like, yeah, don't like calm down, don't take everything literally, don't. And I heard him on some podcast. It's weird to hear your friends on a podcast. But it was sort of like the Bruce Lee thing of like the only style is there is no style, and it's Neo. That's the Matrix again. It's Neo. It's like I've learned all the rules and now I can bend reality. And so like he had gotten to this point where it's like, if you learn how to do this, and, you know, through all the phases of nerdery, then you can make all of your choices intelligently. And like at one point he was doing a bar in New York City called Golden Cadillac, I think. And the theme was like bad 70s drinks. But how do you do like bad 70s disco drinks well? You know, tequila sunrises and stuff like that, and mudslides. How do you somehow make that but good? And so I would say like that's like just a great example. Like I've been in search of this like real thing ever since he introduced me to that, whether it's, you know, my mother being Neapolitan. I mean, my mother, I didn't mention this earlier, but my mom's a couturier. So she's a fashion designer who also makes the stuff. Wow. It's her. Yeah. She made Rachel's wedding dress. Aww. She's made thousands of gowns and stuff for.
I had no idea about that. That's crazy.
For rich ladies that were never very nice. But like, there's something about this is the real thing. Oh, that's the cheap way. That's the easy way. That's the superficial way. And I'm always trying to get to that next level. And I think, you know, what we started to talk a little bit about, but I didn't write original songs. I had a 15-year career where like I wrote one song because Alice Henderson was doing a pilot and she needed a theme song. And so again, I have no imagination. If somebody needs something, I somehow fill into that void. But like I wrote one original song, and then we were in the background of Susan Glatzer's swing documentary, the exact name of which has escaped me. Alive and Kicking. That's what it is. Which I loved. And any documentary is not going to be like exactly the way that I think of the swing world, but I actually loved it. But we had to be dubbed over in the background. Oh. We were in the background of like almost every jam session.
Yeah, I know.
And every one of those, we were probably playing Jumpin' at the Woodside because that's what we would have played. And the Basie estate wanted $30,000. And it's not the Basie estate. It's the company that owns those rights, which I promise you anybody that's named Basie is not getting any money from. But they wanted $30,000, and that's the film's budget. Sorry.
Right.
And so we got dubbed over.
Wow.
And then right around that same time, we got asked to be in the background on The Bachelorette, which were both of you at that? Yeah, you were. Yeah. Yeah. So Nikki was dancing on it. And thanks to Rusty Frank for hooking that up.
Yeah,
sure.
And actually, one of their editors is a swing dancer. Linda
Oh,
Hopper.
really?
Yeah. Whose name I'm blanking on, but she's just a delightful person.
Swing dancing is like Scientology. We got some people everywhere.
Oh,
yeah,
not touching that one with the 10-foot pole. But so we were on the Bachelorette, and they said, "Well, we need you to play these songs that we've pre-cleared because they're like a division of like." I guess it's ABC, so that's Disney. So Disney owns some studio, so they've got those songs. If it was a thing for Warner, all of the Warner music, they'd already have kind of pre-cleared. And we're like, we're not playing that. We're like, that's not our thing.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, I guess I can give you an original song. And right around that time, Nick Williams asked me to do music for Jitterblast.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
And so he needed music that he didn't have to pay exorbitant fees to some company for. So I wrote 3 original songs, and then please don't sue me, but the rest of the songs were basically like us soloing over changes to like obviously some other songs, but because we didn't play the melodies to those songs, they're not copyrightable as those songs. And the titles of no one knows what these titles are.
Yeah.
But like Hose Room is not Hose Room. Funny Buckle Toes is not. Like, I think you can imagine.
It's like the old Nintendo games.
Yeah. Yeah, they're so bad.
Oh, no. Any non-swing dancers will not get that, but it's really
Rose
funny.
Room and Honeysuckle Rose. But, like, so right at that time, I had some original songs, and we were going to the studio, and I was like, all right, well, we're gonna record an album. This was our 4th album, Spread Rhythm Around. We were about to do a second session for that. And I was like, well, what if I give you original material that I can just license you for, nothing? And they're like, okay, great. And so we actually got to play our music.
Oh, good.
And so in the thing, it's our music, and we recorded a song that was like a slow tempo that Gene Veloz, another living legend who I've gotten a chance to meet, and she knows my name and recognizes me, and that is such an honor to me.
I know, right? Every time I'm like, oh, you still know who I am? Oh my God!
I mean, I'll tell you, like, I know we're talking about this journey of like going from never writing an original song to like this new place that we're at, but Camp Hollywood 99 was another one of those Monkey Meet the Monolith moments. I remember walking into the first class, and it was Eric and Sylvia helping Gene Veloz and her brother Ray Phelps. It was their class. It was kind of with Eric and Sylvia assisting, and to see the lady that was in Groovy Movie teaching me a class, it's just that. I mean, it was so deeply meaningful because this is the realest of the real. This is the person that was in the thing. And this is a thing that, like, you go to a million dance studios in America and they wouldn't know anything about this. This is the stuff. And like with the cocktails, it's like you can go to any bar in America and ask for a such and such a drink and they'll totally not make it right because everybody forgot. And obviously, I don't want to erase the history of the people that did keep it, but in the kind of mainstream consciousness, that was gone and that history had been erased. And here were these people kind of finding it again. And so seeing Jean, and then she's in the Bachelorette. Anyway, that was that. But that sort of happened, and right around then is when Josh's Candy Jacket project started, where that he's writing, and he's a drummer. Amazing, right? Drummers that write music. Josh is obviously just a profoundly talented musician and one of the best people I've ever going to get to work with in my life. But he wrote all of those original tunes for that Candy Jacket record. And along with Albert, with helping with some of the arrangements and co-writing some of the songs. But like that idea of like, oh, there's something we can do here. Yeah. And right around then we got interviewed at Beantown for a podcast. One of the other, there's one episode.
Another podcast.
One episode.
So famous.
No, but it just so happened that like Naomi, Michael Gamble, us, and Josh had all released albums right around the same time in 2016. And we're all at Beantown, and Bobby White interviewed us. And we all kind of talked about our philosophies. And I talked about just wanting to like do the slavish kind of traditional thing. Gamble was 100% on that tip, even sort of more than I was at that point.
Oh, wow.
And then Josh was like, I'm never going to record a song that isn't an original song because why?
Yeah.
And then Naomi's obviously doing some original stuff, some covers.
Right.
And she's obviously coming in from a slightly different like kind of era perspective because her stuff's like slightly groovier. And like the different flavors of that. But like all our viewpoints were really interesting. And then, kind of rolled forward. I did a solo guitar CD and I wrote songs. I wrote 2 songs for that. And I was like, oh, these work. These make sense. And then the pandemic happened. I wrote 3 songs for a solo guitar EP. And it just kind of all steamrolled. And so this new Campus 5 CD that will be out in June, basically none of the songs, I think one of them is like kind of a direct copy of a particular version, but it's altered. But like all of our previous things is like, well, that's the Benny Goodman sextet arrangement of this song. That's the Artie Shaw version of this song. That's the Coleman Hawk. Now, like almost all of these are original arrangements. There's 5 of the 15 to 17 songs, depending, are going to be original compositions of mine. And it's kind of neat because it's my friend Dawn telling me, like, dude, chill.
Yeah.
And I'll never forget. I went to this. There's a great bar in Seal Beach called 320 Main. Yeah. And I would go there before Atomic, or not before Strutters.
Yeah.
And I got to be friends with the bartender. And there was this regular there. There was this very young guy, like he just turned 21, but he was kind of a dorky guy and not very socially adept. And he decided once he found this cocktail haven to nerd out so hard on cocktails that no one could. It was Comic Book Guy. It was Comic Book Guy from The Simpsons. Well, actually, in Harry Craddock's Boy Cocktail Method from 1927, it clearly states that it's 3/4 of an ounce, not 1/2 ounce of grenadine. It was that kind of stuff.
That's like her favorite, like accent voice thing. You could possibly
the lateral lisp thing.
Yes, I love it so much.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Watch out, he's coming right for us. All right, voiceover directors, call me.
Casting.
But because of our traveling for Lindy Hop, I would often drag Hillary, who doesn't drink, to all of these cocktail places. But she dragged me to vintage stores that had no guy stuff, so it was like waiting for her to try on amazing gowns over and over and over again. It's like, how many amazing gowns can you find? And there's not even vintage ties for me. But I would drag her to a cocktail bar for a $20 virgin cocktail. But
and a good avocado toast.
That's right. But I went to this place in Houston, Anvil. We were playing at Lindy Fest, and that guy from that bar, he had come to visit.
Oh no!
Weird.
Really?
And he was so annoying. They wrote a blog post about how not to be a pain in the ass to your bartender.
Oh no!
And I was like, oh my God. I am this close to being that guy, and maybe I have ventured into being that guy. And like I have opinions. Like, if you're gonna serve me a Manhattan, I actually know for a fact, no matter how you make it, what I want is 2 ounces of whiskey, 1 ounce of vermouth, and 2 dashes of bitters. And I'm an outlier. Instead of the cherry, which is traditional, I'd prefer a lemon peel.
Oh no.
Now
I have this funny visual of Jonathan going with us to every bar and just like, can you taste this for me first before I try it?
But like, the thing is, like, there's a certain point where, like, if that's the only thing that's going to make you happy, and that's the way I want a Manhattan.
Yeah.
I've had the other versions. I've tried hundreds of different variations. By the way, my friend Don literally got into the whole cocktail thing partially because he tried a Manhattan at Le Bernardin, which is, oh God, maybe it was Daniel Boulud's restaurant. It's not Le Bernardin. Shoot. Anyway, fancy French restaurant. Fancy French. I started doing the lateral lisp, and now my mouth is not working. The fancy French restaurant.
Once you get it started, it's like, I gotta.
Is that punch though?
I'm gonna go. It's gonna be Donald Duck before long. But no, he went to Le Bernardin and or maybe it's Daniel Boulud's restaurant. Anyway, Boulud, Bernardin, you get
one
my
of
point.
those.
But he had a Manhattan for the first time, and it was a properly made thing. And he basically wanted to blind test how many different, like, what's the best Manhattan.
Yeah.
So it's like, how many different whiskeys, how many different ratios, and like you start doing those brackets, and it's like, well, that's 27 Manhattans. Who can actually drink 27 Manhattans? So he like started inviting people over to like try them, and then he kind of met people that were similarly, and that was sort of the thing. You know, like, I know I've had a million Manhattans at this point. Maybe not all in that blind thing. There's actually there's a guy on YouTube, How to Drink, and he literally did a video recently, and it was like 27 Manhattans, and this video almost killed me because by the time he got to the end, he's like, I should not have swallowed any of this.
Oh no!
He's like, that second sip of any one of these was ill-advised.
No way.
Fascinating video, but like,
he's dead now.
Yeah.
No, he's good. He's good. But like, why go to be disappointed? Like, don't get a Manhattan then.
Right.
Yeah.
Like, don't go into the lion's mouth and then demand them to do it right. Like, chill the fuck out.
Yeah.
I feel like we need to all go and hang out at Blind Rabbit.
Oh yeah.
One night.
I would not argue with that. That is a solid bar.
That's my. I mean, I haven't been very many times, but I did go one time, and I ordered something on the menu, and I got it, and it was beautiful, and it was great, and I was like
in a conch shell.
Yeah, it was in a conch shell. I was like, oh, okay, I'll try it, whatever. I'm not a fan of very sweet drinks, and I told the bartender, we were sitting at the bar, which is the best. Give me the opposite of this.
That's all she said.
Yeah, that's all that I said, and they gave me the most amazing, smoky, spicy drink that I've ever had, and I feel like we would have a great time there together.
Yeah, she had two of that.
And like,
okay.
and so much of that is like, you go to TGI Fridays, they're not doing that.
No,
like,
definitely
this is
not.
A start. That blue drink. Yeah, and obviously, like, it's come back big, and you go to almost any major any city in America, almost, like, wherever there's fine dining, there's somebody that's nerded out on this and has brought it back, and a bunch of them have like gone to there's a thing called Tales of the Cocktail, which is like their version of like Camp Hollywood or Riley.
Yeah.
And it's a big convention.
Like, ooh, tell me more.
So like my friend Dawn for many years was running back of house and the Cocktail Apprentice program. So you would get them to pay your way if you did the back of house stuff. So, Dawn would have to figure out the logistics of like how many limes you need to order and how many hours it takes to squeeze them based on when the drinks need to be ready and how quick. Like, I know for a fact he's done research on how many dashes there are in a bottle of Angostura bitters, which changes over the course of the bottle as the bottle empties. The air draw is different, so he averaged it out. Okay, this is some serious stuff, because if you need to make 200 Manhattans, you're not going to dash it 400 times. You're just going to take the dasher off and then measure it. But you got to get that right.
I forgot. I was going to say, like, he actually measured how many dashes are in 3 dots and a dash.
Huh?
But
the three.
There's one.
That's
a tropical cocktail.
Yeah, it's a tiki drink. Yeah.
That's
what I was like. There's one.
There's a whole.
Don't say tiki. Yeah. It's
no, but there's a rich discussion going on in that. Well, probably not in that community directly, because that community we really need to learn about it. But among some of the better bartenders about being socially conscious about this history of tiki drinks and tropical drinks. And there's just a lot to unpack.
There
more
is,
than we want to get into now.
Yes, there is, but it's a great drink.
Yeah. Well, 3 dots and a dash. Well, and at least that's one of those drinks where it's not some kind of insensitively named thing that mocks a Polynesian culture or something.
Totally.
Which is part of the problem with this. But like, all of this being said, it's all about knowledge. It's about like you're not trained to know what you like. You just kind of you're guessing.
Exactly.
Now you figured out. Now you develop a relationship with your bartender. Now you know what you want. Now you can discern.
Yeah.
And whether you like a boat drink, like a super sweet thing, or you like your mezcal, thing or whatever.
Mezcal is my new favorite
Smoky
right now.
Like it's all about knowing that and then being able to appreciate that. And that's the same thing with all of this art. It's like learn the history, learn as much as you need to really be even remotely knowledgeable about. Don't be that guy on TikTok who read read the scholarly article, but that doesn't actually know the basics. So he totally doesn't.
Exactly.
Learn all of that and then go from that, because, the other kind of last bit of this is like, I'm chasing the dragon of that first experience every time I went to the Pegu Club. I want that great bartender experience, and like the problem is you go to a place. And maybe that's not that kind of bar because they're doing too high a volume. Right. Or maybe, frankly, the bartender's just not into you.
Exactly. Totally.
Like they're just not.
Like, move on. You don't actually care about your drink yet.
Rachel used to joke if I was like nerding out with the bartender. She's like, "You're on the date with me, remember?" But like, the other thing is, what is the value of, say, me re-recording other than the solos on it? Exactly the Benny Goodman arrangement of such and such. Like what you were talking about with the people in Lithuania asking you a question. We played recently somewhere, and I don't ever want to play with another band ever. I just want to play my own night.
Right.
It's not fun to play with another band.
Right.
Even if it's really nice, it's still competitive. It still feels gross, and no good comes of it.
Totally.
But we were somewhere in Europe where in Europe it seems like everything has to have 2 bands on one stage.
Because they're real cheap.
No, they just think more value.
Right.
And part of the thing is like, I don't want to be there for 6 hours.
Right.
Like I want my first set, and I don't want to wait their whole set of me getting cold.
You know what's funny? 2 things. 1, I was in that class with Gene Veloz with you.
Yeah.
2, I was in this venue with you, watching you.
Nice.
In Spain.
You're gonna cut that out.
Yeah, I know. Don't worry about that. I was there.
No. But that's not that. Well, that was one of the that was definitely one of the times. No, but also like we played a gig where the band's entire set was like half the stuff from our albums.
Oh no.
Or 3/4.
Yeah.
And it's like I just discovered well, I'm like Columbus over here discovering shit that already exists where people are already living there.
Well, you are Italian.
Thankfully I didn't bring smallpox to this song.
No.
But
don't worry, this is all cut. Don't worry.
No, I can totally make fun of Columbus as a colonizer. I'm down with that. But my, I thought I was so clever because I found on YouTube through the algorithm this random song. I don't even remember the guy's name, but like it's Nat Cole, Buddy Rich, and Charlie Shavers. Like it's all these great people, and this Herbie Hamer. He's a sax player. I've never heard of Herbie Hamer. Yeah. He must have been in some band, and then like was their star soloist for like a hot minute. Did a record date with 2 songs, and that was it. But black market stuff, and I found this, and I arranged it. I couldn't even do it, and I couldn't figure it out. So I hired Tim Gill, our dearly departed friend Tim Gill. I hired him to transcribe it for me, and I was so proud of that song. Yeah. It was on their album when they got there. And I'm like, come on. Oh. And then like half of their set list was our same stuff, and I'm like, dude. And it really dawned on me. Man. It's crazy. Yeah, I mean, again, like, that wasn't a song I'd recorded. Right. Yeah. They beat me to it. And here I am feeling all, inappropriate, like, so, I found that song first. No, I didn't. It was from 1945. But there was a value when we started in I can pick the best crates. And I was picking my crate.
Yeah, for sure.
But now everyone's got the crates. Yeah. And what are you doing that is of value besides your curation? Because frankly, that's not the first time another band has like recorded a whole bunch of our songs back to back to back to back. Yeah. And I'm not doing a different arrangement of them. I'm doing the same thing and they're just copying the same copy. Yeah. And they're not copying me necessarily. I don't mean to say that, but they're copying the same source material. So what am I doing? Well, I've got Josh Colazzo. Okay. But what else am I doing? And all of the other amazing musicians I get to work with, and we have won best rhythm section before in contests. But like so when it came time to write original songs, it's like, well, that's something I can do, and really like it came from I wrote Millhouse Stomp for Nick Williams' Jitter Blast, and it was like this could totally be a Canvas 5 song, and then it was like. Playing it at gigs and people were like, yeah, we respond to this. Yeah. And then I wrote a big band version of it and it was like, this works.
Perfect.
And like, is it as good as Cottontail? No. But it doesn't need to be. Because the fact of the matter is if the other band's going to play a note for note version of Cottontail, you can just play the same note for note version and maybe somebody thinks the other band's better, even though they're obviously not, because we're the no. But I mean, like somebody
obviously.
But like you're forcing an apples to apples comparison, right? And like especially when I would argue that other band is an apple and we're an orange. Like now it's just people saying that the orange is a better apple, and I'm like, no, that's not what it is. So like, this whole journey now, like the way I think about Lindy Focus is about this incubator that. We study Chick Webb, we study Lionel Hampton, we study Jimmy Lunsford. And then how does that then manifest moving forward? And like hearing Josh, hearing us do an original arrangement. I mean, and again, it's not like the cleverest thing in the world. It's just I would do anything for you. It's a traditional jazz standard, but like I wrote a little interlude that changes keys for Hillary, and then like I have this particular sequence of what happens when, and that's our version. Okay. Yeah. But like hearing Josh then throw in this like super Chick Webby thing right there. It's like, oh, that's so cool. Yeah. And then like, there's a song that we did for the Lionel Hampton project, Arkansas, which it's so obscure. Like I found it on SoundCloud. Like you couldn't even find a CD of it. Great. It's some weird thing that
SoundCloud. That's how deep we went.
No, what's her name that she sang with Lionel Hampton and
I'm so bad with names in general.
Oh no, I feel bad. It's escaping me. But she did all the stuff we did on Hampton Night. But this was something that like had been released under her name somehow or whatever. It like wasn't on the discographies, and maybe it wasn't recorded during the record band that happened in 1943 to 1944. But we found Arkansas. Yeah. The only version of it that exists is so scratchy you could never really DJ it. So we transcribed it. Despite the scratching, we played it at Lindy Focus. That's great. But there's no CD of that. So if you want to DJ Arkansas at your local dance, like I get why somebody would DJ the Gene Krupa and Ito Day version of a song that we've recorded. Like I get that. I know I would too.
Yeah, for sure.
But like, there's no version of Arkansas that you can DJ. So I made a new version of Arkansas, and I didn't do just a copy or an adaptation of that exact thing. I was like, all right, we'll take some elements and we'll do our own thing. Yeah. And now there's a version of Arkansas that we have on our CD that'll come out in June.
That's amazing. And we actually play a lot of your music when we teach classes or
especially
or
now,
DJ.
During the COVID times, we were trying to play a lot of more modern bands and like say it out loud, you know.
So every time we do any kind of like rehearsal session where we're just dancing in the studio, we try to play a modern band just because you guys are all creating something new and exciting and we want to support that as much as possible.
Well, and like being a dancer, like I knew putting the beats per minute on the sleeve was like really helpful.
Such a big help.
And I'll never forget going to Hawaii on our honeymoon in 2004. And so like our second album had come out by then. But like we're not traveling to all the big Lindy Hop events like we do now.
Yeah.
And I walk into their local dance. And I mean I did like go on pecking.org, which was their forum back then, and like say, where's the place to go? I'm going to be in town. And people are like, oh, hey, I know you because you have a CD. And like, you know, and we met like Joanne Coker and Brett Keane. But like I walked into the dance and they're playing Half Tight Boogie on our CD. And I was like, oh my God.
That's great.
But like recording a clean, well-recorded version of all of these classic songs that was going to be 3 minutes. There wasn't going to be a bass solo that you had to cut out. I mean, I remember hearing about DJs that would like edit the bass solos out of songs because they were like, no.
Oh, weird.
Crazy.
Well, I mean, if
that's
they're
weird to me. Like, I get why, but that's just weird.
If it's like a whole chorus bass solo on a song that every other part of it you'd want to dance to, maybe.
Right.
But like,
weird.
It immediately kind of found an audience because DJs are like, well, the beats per minute are on here. I know I can trust this. Like, and there wasn't any other, you know, there wasn't nearly as much modern music as there is now. And, you know, like, it's so amazing now that we've got Laura and Mint Julep and we got Keenan making music and obviously Michael Gamble and Naomi and Josh. And so, like, we're really lucky that all of the top bands, for the most part, making music for Lindy Hop right now are being run by dancers.
Yeah.
And I think there's still a lot of, like, jazz musicians that are kind of bummed by those postmodern requirements that are artificial that we have, like those song length things. Because if you think about it, you talk about overrepresenting, underrepresenting. Everything from the 30s that we danced to was on a 78 RPM record originally, and that was only so long. So that arrangement was truncated to fit that exactly.
Right.
Totally, yeah.
And occasionally there'd be a two-sider like Sing, 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 or like Hampton did a couple things like Airmail Special and Rocket Rhythm where there's two parts. And so like when he played live, it was just a 5.5 minute song. You know?
Yeah. We can totally relate that to dancers' terms too.
God,
it's kind of like when we get booked for a gig and they're like, we want to see Hells of Poppin' style dancing. And we're like, okay, well.
Or like we have a routine and they're like, we need half of that. Or like it needs to be, now it needs to be 2 weeks.
Can you take all the other stuff out and just do the tricks?
Yeah. So I mean, obviously we could be talking about this forever. Like we got to wrap it up, unfortunately.
Yes, no, I don't want to. Please, but I need the socialization.
That doesn't mean you have to go.
So much more
that means
here.
we got to wrap it up for this thing. Jonathan, it's been such a pleasure. Thank you so much. Like obviously, like you've been studying this and being a devoted person to your craft and to an integral part of our community, and it's been such an honor to have you here and to hear you speak so passionately about so many different subjects that all coincide with like again what Nikki said earlier, your authenticity of the whole idea that makes you you. And it's just like it's so I'm like, just keep talking. It's so cool.
I know. We'll stay here all night.
Yeah.
We're good to go.
But like Sarah Spoon calls them Stout lessons.
But it's like it's not that, it's that like you're making it worthwhile, and I feel like that's what I gather from everything you say is like it's not that you just like here's some fucking knowledge, like no, it's like here's some cool shit, but also like here's how you can relate it, like everything you spoke to me like almost it felt like it. I perhaps love no sound more than the sound of my own voice. As an only child desperate for human interaction, I probably talk way too much. And I don't listen to. Yeah, I know, seriously. Pandemic, yeah, exactly.
Oh my God, it's on fleek, as they say. That's a like 5-year reference.
Say it anymore. But thank you guys so much for listening. It's been so kind. Remember to listen to all of our podcasts and rate and review us, and find Bandcamp going on over here with Jonathan and all the other ones. The first Friday of May is going to be, is it the 7th?
Yes.
First Friday in May, which is the 7th, not only his, but everybody. Just buy up everything you can, but definitely pick that up. It's so
And
good.
we've got T-shirts.
And we got T-shirts.
Yeah.
And stickers.
Get all the merch.
And posters.
Yeah, we'll be putting all of those things in the comments down below, in the notes or the YouTubes or whatever you find it. So thank you, Jonathan, again. It's been such a pleasure to not only just hear you, but also see your entire face.
And drink your drink.
Yeah.
My pleasure. And like I was saying, I mean, I do love the sound of my own voice, but I hope my verbosity, I hope you get that, like, what's really important to me is the stories of these people and how much I love this stuff.
Absolutely.
And how great I think it is and how much I'm just trying to share it with all of you.
Yes,
So,
absolutely.
Absolutely.
100%.
That comes across so well.
I mean, I think I'm pretty great, but these people are really, I'm kidding, but I really do mean it, like, this is the stuff.
It's funny, like in the last thing, it's like you do have a story for everything and every step you've taken within your life, and it's so easy to see. It's just like, wow, holy shit! Like everything you do is like with intention. If you don't find the intention, you actually do find the intention.
Well, and it's this full circle too that we keep talking about every time we have one of these conversations on the podcast, and maybe it's that we're drinking the whole time too, but we don't ever get to do this.
Nope.
Where we just sit down and talk to each other. That never fucking happens.
Exactly.
And so thank you
so
much.
I don't know what Victorville was like.
I
don't know. I mean, I've been there, but I don't know what it was like for you. And that's a whole nother thing.
That's a whole nother. We'll talk about that after the podcast.
All right, everybody. Thank you guys so much.
Thank you.
Bye.